Irish Breakdown Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is post-game show time. I'm Brian Driscoll. That's Ryan Roberts. That's Vince Adario. That's Sean Davis. We got the whole gang with y'all tonight, breaking down the Notre Dame victory over number 16 BYU. The Irish won 28-20. Guys, we're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about how a team that how Notre Dame outgained BYU 496 to 280, but had to hang on by the skin of their teeth to win this game. But as we said during the week, fellas, the important thing was winning this game. You needed to beat number 16 BYU because the schedule sets up real favorably. There's a lot to clean up. There's a lot we're going to discuss as we get into the show. But the important thing is this team went on the road, came out of the bye week, went on the road, won the game, let BYU get back in, but on both sides of the ball, when they needed to make plays down the stretch, they made them. The defense made a huge stop after struggling the second half. The offense had some big runs to put the game away and ice it. This was a good team victory and a game that we said all week, fellas, was a must win. So we'll have a lot to say, fellas, but at the end of the day, you just beat number 16 BYU 28-20 in the game you really controlled almost the entire game.
Yeah, and it was the first ranked win for Coach Freeman, right? So it's obviously a big moment. We've talked about a season of firsts, and it got off to a rocky start, but now 3 straight victories. First ranked victory, playing in Vegas, Shamrock Series game. Like you said, Brian, there's a lot of good to take out of this one.
Yeah, and I think what people lose, because Notre Dame was favored in this game, obviously. I think I didn't look, but I'm guessing all 4 of us predicted that Notre Dame was going to win. And it just, for me personally, it just doesn't feel like they beat a ranked team, but they did. They beat the number 16 team in the country. That's a big deal. You know, I mean, considering where Notre Dame was a few weeks ago to where they are now, defeating the number 16 team in the country is a big deal. And I keep having to remind myself of that, hey, they just did something that was pretty good. You know what I mean? And so I think that might be part of the issue with some of the Notre Dame fans out there, that they just beat a BYU team that they pretty much dominated from start to finish, with a couple of exceptions here and there. But they were ranked, Notre Dame wasn't. And Notre Dame won that game. So I think that needs to be brought up and re-emphasized. Sure. You know what I mean? It's a big deal.
Yeah. I think this game just shows that they're growing as a team. A lot of talk this week about a lot of ancillary things. Certain guys getting run, getting ticked. Look, at the end of the day, it's like Marcus Freeman said in the post-game interview. The process needs to be in front of everything. Everything needs to be better. And he needs to focus on making sure everything is better within the program. Michael Mayer did I thought was maybe too transparent after the game, talking about the lack of camaraderie in the locker room the first 2 weeks. My eyes opened up wide when he said that. But, whatever they needed to solve, it's been solved, and they're continuing to build. It's a good sign. We might have wanted it to be pretty. If you view this game as lipstick on a pig, then oh well, it's a W. Let's keep moving on, and maybe the games can get prettier, and we can end up with the prom queen by the time Clemson comes to town.
Sean, that's a great segue to a point that I want to make, because here's the reality. Will the performance like today beat Clemson or USC? No. But here's why this game was so important, because you don't play Clemson next week. You don't play USC the week after that. You've got 3 games between this and Clemson. This is the best team you're going to play between now and Clemson. Does that mean that there aren't teams between now and Clemson that can knock you off if you play like you did against Marshall? Of course there are. But if you play like you did today, the next 3 teams will also catch L's, right? And the reality is you had to get this win, because, Ryan, as we discussed in our show yesterday, Sean, and I'm sure you guys talked about that this week as well, is you come out of this game with a win. I don't care if it's by a point or by 40, you're setting yourself up to go on a run. And those are the games you can kind of get right, right? You can get right against Stanford. You can get right against UNLV. You can get right to a degree. No, let me rephrase that. You can get right against Stanford and UNLV and then get tested by Syracuse before you play Clemson, because I do think Syracuse is a quality football team. And so you had to come out with a win. Is there stuff that's got to get cleaned up? Yes. I love that Coach Freeman said that after the game. Like, you could tell he was saying, hey, let's enjoy the win, but – and that's really where you want your head coach to be, right? Like, guys, good win, but – because that's a comment, Sean, that's about the process, not the result. And the process is, hey, guys, this wasn't who we can be, and our goal should always be to play the way we're capable of being. Yeah. And I think that's the important thing. So it was a game that they still have issues finishing a little bit, although I will say they did finish on defense and offense when they needed to, right? You would have liked to see maybe finish a little bit sooner. We'll get into some of that stuff. But you needed the defense to step up and make a play late, and they had a huge fourth down stuff in a half where they were just getting ran on the entire half. When they needed to make a stop, they did. And they also had a huge stop early in the game on the third down too. So, like, they showed some short area toughness. The offense then needed to put them away late. They did it. They were able to move the chains, put the game away, and earn the win. So, again, Notre Dame beats BYU 28-20. Vince, you kind of talked about this a little bit. You know, Notre Dame had 496 yards to BYU's 280. Notre Dame passed for 262 yards. They rushed for 234 yards. I think that's a very misleading 234 yards, which we'll get to here at the end, but it was a hard-earned 234 yards. BYU only passed for 120 yards, fellas. Rushed for 160. Notre Dame's third down offense was excellent in this game. They went 11 of 16. They held BYU to a 3 of 9 on third down and had 73 plays to BYU's 46. Notre Dame averaged 6.8 yards per play. Got the win, fellas, and that was the big thing. They needed a win, and they got the win. So let's talk a little offense, fellas. I'm going to kind of just kick it off with a little big picture aspects of the offense. There were some things I liked, things I didn't like. We'll get into it. I thought this wasn't an incredibly well-called game, to be completely honest with you. There's some things I liked, and we'll get into some of those things. But I thought this game was more about just Notre Dame's dudes were better than BYU's dudes for the most part. And there's some mistakes that were made, but there were some head-scratching things in this game. But I thought this was the first time really against a quality opponent in a couple years, really in a few years, that the offense just came out and said, yeah, we're better than you, and we're going to go make the plays. I mean, we've seen them do that against teams that aren't good, but they did that against a good team today, fellas. And I think that is that's one of the several positives we'll take out of this game before we kind of dive into some of the things that are a little bit more critical. I thought the players stepped up and really just played hard. Jaden Thomas making a great play. Michael Mayer just making some exceptional plays. You know, Audric Estimate whiffing on a block, then hopping up off the ground, getting free, and then Drew Pine shoves it to him and he runs for 13 yards. Talk about, hey, you screwed up. So do you pout and just look about, oh, man, I messed, or do you get up and go do something? He went up and did something and made a play. There was a lot of things like that from today's game, fellas, that I thought was a really positive takeaway when you look at it from an offensive standpoint.
I think it's exemplified best, to your point, Brian, that, I mean, the game was pretty much kind of emphasized, at least in the passing game, around Michael Mayer, right? And getting him the football, even when you knew Michael Mayer was going to get the football, right? Like, they knew that their player was better. Notre Dame's player was better than whoever on BYU was covering him, right? So I agree with you. I mean, you could tell the stars for Notre Dame offensively came to play for the most part, right? And those guys were the key in the victory. But I think that you saw that there was a difference in athleticism on the field from Notre Dame's offense compared to BYU's defense.
Sean, I want to talk about the run game here real quick, because this was a very frustrating aspect of the game for me. Again, the success came from Notre Dame just leaned on BYU. They were better than BYU. I mean, the 46-yard run late in the game by Estimate was just – I mean, they basically stuffed it. They just couldn't bring him down, and he breaks off. It wasn't like it was an incredibly well-executed play that allowed them to put the game away. I was puzzled by it, because when you watch BYU play, here's what you notice about BYU. Number one, they're pretty big and physical in the box. Number two, they're not real fast, laterally fast. And what we've seen from teams is a lot of teams will beat them on the perimeter, off, outside zone, mid zone, stretch, jets. off tackle stuff, and then come back with the inside stuff. Notre Dame chose to come out, run a bunch of 2 tight end stuff, and run right at BYU size.
Yeah.
And it really limited their success in a lot of instances. So, Sean, that was something that really puzzled me. After 2 weeks and watching BYU play 5 games, that's what you came away with? You're going to run power and duo in the first quarter when that has been like not what's worked for you this year?
Yeah, then also, when you try to run outside, you don't recognize that they're out leveraging you and putting numbers to the field to stop you from running outside because you've been watching film on them the previous 3 games. BYU still doesn't do a good job setting the edge, and we knew that going into the game. What was the one thing we said in short they were really good at in the games they played, even the game they lost?
Right.
If you run in short yardage, if you run straight ahead, they're really good.
And Sean, they stopped Utah State on almost every 3rd and 4th and short in that game. It was, and
it's like, what does Notre Dame do? They get down in the red zone, 3rd and short, 4th and short. We're going to run the ball just straight ahead.
Right.
Look, this is a great thing because I was bored. And what that means is I expected Notre Dame to be much better.
Yep.
They were much better. They controlled the game. They got the W.
Right.
And it's like, okay, let's move on. It reminded me of watching Lou Holtz games when you knew they were about to blast Air Force. And they had a couple of turnovers and some penalties, and they didn't end up putting up as many points as they should have. It was kind of like in that area. But yes, we know we can point out the negative things, but I'm going to tell you what. It feels so much better. It's so far away from Marshall. This is so far away from Marshall.
Sean, if they would have played like this against Marshall, they'd have won by 3 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yes.
So my level of thankfulness right now as a fan is like, thank you. This is just fine. I'll take boring wins for the rest of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
No, not the rest. I'll take it today. I can't go with you the next 2 weeks.
Look, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
I don't have much faith because of certain things, but hey.
Completely. And here's some of those things, Vince. I want to kick this to you. Here was a super chat from Joe Papiti. He says, what I saw was that when they needed to run, they couldn't, like at the goal line. Also, that screen pass play that needs to be scrapped. I'm going to somewhat disagree with Joe on this. And here's what I'm going to disagree with a little bit, Joe. I want to pull that back up. Vince, I'm going to kick this to you. I felt when they needed yards out, they could get them. The problem, and here was an issue, the problem with the goal line play was it was a poor call. You're at about the 3-yard line. It's 4th and 1, and you go 11 personnel, which allows BYU to crowd the box. And when you try to just run up the middle, you don't have enough guys to block the 8 guys they had in the box. It's like, what were you thinking there?
Yeah.
There's just a lot of stuff like that. But then they just, when they were able to get the yards they needed to get in other times because they were just better than BYU.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff like that, Vince, where you're like, I don't like the call, but that they can't cover that dude. Or
yeah, right.
And that was really
what
we saw from this game.
I was very complimentary of Tommy Rees, the past 2 games because I thought he called a great game. I thought his game plans were fantastic. I think he took a step back tonight. I wasn't overly impressed with his game plan, and I wasn't overly impressed with some of the calls. Like, for example, going 13 personnel when you're backed up to the goal line on 2nd and 9, and then you try to get too cute and run play action on a naked boot. And it was darn near a safety for Notre Dame. I mean, it was just that's not the call that you make in that end of the field with 3 tight ends on the field. I mean, I don't have a problem running play action with 3 tight ends, but how about you show that you can run the ball with 3 tight ends first before you start doing play action with 3 tight ends? I don't know. It just there were questionable calls at questionable places on the field, and I don't necessarily have an issue with the screen pass. It wasn't executed very well because they ran it right into the box where they had all the guys. Like, that's not how you want to run that, and that's not where you want to run that. You need to run it so he's actually behind some blockers, because you don't need much of a block to get 3 yards if you're Michael Mayer.
That's the play that went for a touchdown against Ohio State.
Correct. Absolutely.
And that was part of my problem. Like, one of the things I said in my game observations, Ryan, was I loved how Tommy Rees got Michael Mayer involved in a lot of different ways early.
Yeah.
And you're like, we were joking in the chat. We were all chatting during the games. Like, how do they not have a plan for Michael Mayer? Well, part of it is because Tommy Rees moved him around a lot early, and he was running crossers. He was running outs. He was running seams.
Finally saw some crossers.
Overs. We saw him get a couple deep balls. I mean, imagine that. Michael Mayer can catch the ball down the field.
Shocker, right?
But here's the thing that bothered me. Eventually, BYU figured it out, and Notre Dame didn't figure out that BYU figured it out. So, for example, on that particular play, I mean, that play worked against Ohio State. You knew at that point in time that BYU is zeroing in on Michael Mayer. Did you guys see when the ball started to go to him, like 5 BYU guys converged? A good offensive coordinator needs to know that ahead of time and say, pump fake something to him and then throw Holden Stace or Eli Raridan or somebody else, like a little corner route or something backside. And that's the thing that kind of frustrated me is you did a great job with Mayer early. Great job with him early. But then didn't use him to set up other things.
Right.
And that's the thing that frustrated me. There were some missed opportunities there, because the reason this game was 28-20 is because Notre Dame had to settle for a field goal there, which was a poor play call. They got stopped on 4th and 1, which was a poor play call. There are things like that where it's like, guys, what are you doing here, right? You've got to anticipate that, Ryan. And there's a lot of stuff like that from tonight where it's like, you see what BYU's doing. Why aren't you anticipating that and going with some sort of counter for it?
Well, Brian, I mean, I think when you opened this whole conversation to begin the podcast, you said that, Notre Dame, I think Notre Dame was more talented than BYU, right? And you just saw kind of that talent discrepancy a lot with Michael Mayer and some of the running backs and all that type of stuff. And I think that Tommy Rees called the game that way, if I'm being honest. Like, it was a vanilla game plan. There wasn't much creativity. It was more like, okay, when I need a big pass play, I'm going to go to 87. I'm just going to give him an opportunity. He caught 11 out of 12 targets or something like that. So, like, obviously,
so absurd, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Mayer is a great player, but then also in the run game, we've talked about it, right? I mean, you're just running duo. And I mean, you started running some wide zone in the second half, which I thought was, about time. Like, let's run some more wide zone.
They went right down the field and scored.
Shocker how that happens. I mean, we talked all week about how they're weak on the edges, but yeah, sure. But I mean, regardless, I feel like they were just kind of like, I didn't see any like real. I saw a little jet motion, but like there was no jet sweep off of anything. There was no end around. Like, there was just not a ton of creativity in the run games. I just felt like Tommy Rees was like, okay, I have the best tight end in college football, potentially. I have a stable of running backs that are fantastic. I'm just going to ride these guys to the victory. And I just feel like there was just a lack of creativity, and it was just a vanilla game plan. And I think he just let his guys be guys, which is fine at certain points. But, I mean, when you're still struggling to get guys like Lorenzo Styles to football consistently, wide receivers, I mean, Braden Lindsey is just a stop route guy right now. That's all he is.
And there's just times you could see they were just using him to, I mean, he was taking the top off the defense a few times, but it's just like they're not even looking at him.
Yeah, he's like a decoy.
Yeah. There were times, however, we talk about the quarterback, and I want to start off I want to start off Drew Pine. I want to start off some positives first, because there were some things I think he's going to have to get better at. But I thought Drew played with a lot of poise, guys. I thought there were mistakes in the game that he'll need to do better at, which we can get into. But as a guy making his third start, I thought he played with a lot of poise. I thought his ball placement was better than it has been most of the games. It's not even just about completing passes, but completing it where it needs to be. After his early miss on Logan Diggs on that first drive where he got pressured, he's got to throw that ball out in front and just hit him and get a touchdown there. He's got to make that play. I thought he settled in after that, guys, and made some throws. I thought he was accurate. I thought he played with a lot of poise, and even like the third down scramble, like he's running outside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, he's going to run right out of bounds, and he's going to be short. And then bam, he cuts up inside and makes that play. He made, like, there's a lot of teaching tape in this game, Vince, for Drew Pine.
Absolutely.
But that's good and bad. But the good is the kid would play with a lot of poise, a lot of moxie, and yeah.
I was just saying specifically on third down. I mean, I thought that his third down presence was really good. And that's a lot, man. I mean, that's, I really wasn't sure what we would get from Drew Pine once we got to, week 3, week 4, of him being the starter, settling in, once teams get tape on him, etc. You know what? He's settling in just fine. And he's obviously comfortable behind his O-line. He's not jittery back there. He trusts those guys to block for him, and they stepped up and blocked for him.
How can you not be comfortable behind that offensive line in pass pro? Well, I'm Vince. You're right. I'm just making a comment to show how good the offensive line.
And I will also say, if you remember 2 quarterbacks ago, when there was a beautiful pocket, the quarterback got jumpy and would run outside the pocket. Remember? I mean, that
3 quarterbacks ago.
Oh, okay. Sorry. 2 years ago. So, yeah, you're right. But you know what I'm saying. So, I like the fact that he's comfortable back there and he trusts the guys in front of him to make a play because they are making plays, and it allows him to keep his eyes downfield, et cetera, et cetera. So I was really impressed with his third down poise tonight. There obviously there's some throws that I'm sure he would want back. And like you said, there's going to be some teaching film that they're going to be able to dive into. And I think he's a smart kid, and they followed Drew Pine, and there's no doubt about it. They follow him. He's a leader, et cetera. So he's doing a good job. He really is doing a good job there. They've obviously changed the offense to fit what Drew Pine does, and that's totally fine. That's what you should do. But I think he's settling in.
Sean, I was really impressed also in this game, and we've seen it before. His willingness to stay in there and take a hit, if it means getting the ball out, is really impressive. He's saying some great stuff too.
I really was. It was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. Now I forgot how I started it.
We're talking about just his willingness to stay in the pocket and just take shots, knowing that he's got to do that to get the ball out.
And just go. I was saying, going back to the first point you made, I was totally livid because I felt like he stood in there, and you just man, Diggs is wide open on that first drive. Just hit him. Just hit him. Just throw it out in front. Just let him walk in for the touchdown. And then he comes back. The one thing with him is that he is a lot more comfortable than he makes you feel on the couch. Like when you're watching him play, you're like, oh boy. But I get the feeling that he's totally in control of himself, regardless of whether or not he makes a mistake, makes a play, or the outcome of the play. I feel like he's at a space now where he's very capable of doing exactly what's asked of him. And right now, that might go to the point that Tommy Rees right now isn't willing to really ask a lot of him.
Sure.
And Tommy knows I don't have to ask a lot of him to win games and have an efficient offense. And I'm going to stick to this until I see improvement and I can trust him with a little bit more on his plate. So, those things go hand in hand. And at this point, you do feel like that at least Tommy should be able to trust him a little bit more to open it up, specifically early on first downs, first
or
and
to
10.
throw a wide open corner route in the end zone when there are 5 guys running at Michael Mayer.
Absolutely. And look, especially in the red zone, at some point, you can't handcuff because Drew Pine is not going to beat you in the red zone with his legs like a Tyler Buckner.
Right.
So when you take that away, that's basically extra defenders, in the passing lanes. And you have to be able to simplify things. If you're going to bring everybody in, then you know what? Take some shots, some 50-50 balls to the corner with some of your best athletes. Like, go one-on-one. Stop just bang your head against a brick wall, just running the ball from 8 yards out 3 times, expecting to be able to overpower people. Like, these aren't Power 5 teams that you're facing or, D1 athletes that you're facing.
Right.
Like, BYU was strong up the middle. Like, do something else.
Yeah.
Right.
It was obvious that their athletes could out-athlete BYU all game long.
Yes.
How about continuing to out-athlete BYU in the red zone?
Yes. Yes.
Sean, I'm just impressed, Sean, that you sit through Notre Dame games. I'm up out of my seat constantly with this team, so I'm just impressed.
Well, and I will also say that the success of Drew Pine is great, and it's maybe not what I fully expect. I expected him to be able to lead this team and all of those different things. And we talked about that during the summer multitude of times, right? What's amazing to me, and I don't know if it's amazing in a good way, is that Drew Pine is doing what he's doing basically without wide receivers. I mean, they're not even using the wide receivers in any way, shape, or form, and they're still doing these things, offensively, and they're moving the ball, and they're doing it's like a third of the offense is just missing, and Drew Pine is still having success, which is just mind-boggling to me.
I'm gonna somewhat disagree with that a little bit, Vince, because I actually thought they schemed a little bit more for the receivers today, a little bit. I felt like Drew didn't find them open, and I'll give you a couple examples. Number one, I mean, they took a shot down the field, Jaden Thomas. They worked the seams. You got Lorenzo Warhol caught a seam. You saw Jaden Thomas catch a seam. That's a throw that was one of the bad early misses against Marshall, against Cal, was that just not hitting man in the seam. Since then, he's been really good up the seams, and he attacks the middle of the field as good as any quarterback Notre Dame has had. Since, I mean, God, I'm trying to think who's the last quarterback that was willing to throw the ball over the middle. You have to probably go back to Malik, maybe Everett, where quarterbacks just consistently willing to make those kind of plays. Yeah. There were other times, however, where there were guys open. He was just locking in on Michael Mayer at times in the second half. And so for example, the third down on the drive where he threw the pick, he hit Jaden Thomas and you move the chains and it looks like a great play, but he had Lorenzo Styles behind him wide open and he may catch it and score. At the very least, Alabama just beat Texas A&M. Texas A&M went for it had a chance to win it, first and goal. 3 seconds left, and Bama stopped him.
It was a terrible play, by the way.
Yeah,
terrible play call. Terrible play call.
There were opportunities there where I thought they did some level stuff, which we've been asking for all year, and it worked at times. And at times, Drew just didn't get there. But the thing is, guys, he'll get to that eventually. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of experience. That's the teaching tape we talked about, where it's like, hey, you missed that. And you said, well, you converted a third and long. Yes, you did. But you ended up not scoring. If you make the right read, maybe Lorenzo catches that, creases the defense and scores, right? Those are the things that'll come. But even with that, he went 22 of 28 with 262 yards and 3 touchdowns. The interception was bad. He stared him. That ball might have got picked off even if it did get tipped. And that linebacker was closing. Drew never saw him. I mean, those are things that you can't make that mistake. You've got to do a better job there. You got to find Lorenzo. You got to do this, you got to do that. That's the teaching tape that we're going to talk about, fellas. But give me a teaching tape. Sean, this kind of goes back to the point you're making earlier. Give me a game that I got to correct a lot of stuff where my quarterback went 22 of 28 for 262 yards and 3 touchdowns against a ranked team that we said during the week, and I don't know what you guys were talking about this, Sean, but Ryan and I talking about, this is a quality pass defense, and I thought he did a really good job picking them apart and attacking when he needed to attack. And like the throw to Jaden Thomas, was it a great throw? No, but it doesn't have to be. Just give your guy a flipping shot, and made the play.
Yeah, he did.
That's all you can ask, right? Give your guys a shot, especially in a matchup when your athletes are better than their athletes. And like you said, there are a lot of really good things to talk about tonight. Like, it's 28-20.
Yeah.
You feel like the margin should have been much larger or much wider. But you go back to talking about this offensive line, continuing to build. I want to talk about that fourth quarter run by Logan Diggs.
Oh,
big time.
That was beautiful.
Big time run.
Big time hole, too. I mean,
absolutely.
They opened up
It was.
And you could tell if he was truly 100%, that stiff arm would have been would have stung the defensive back a little more with the left. You could tell he didn't stretch it out there as much as you wanted him to, but big time run at the end.
Blake had a huge block on that.
He did get up to the second level.
The run, Sean, the hole opened up for an 8-yard gain, right? Like his play after that, was that's the difference between that's where a running look. The line did its job, opened up the hole. He's got to do his job to turn an 8-yard run into a 33-yard run. And that's what was so impressive about that, Sean. I mean, just the balance that he showed was really impressive. Really impressive.
It seemed like Chris Tyree struggled with his footing all night.
Yes, he was constantly leaning forward too much. And getting ahead of himself, not playing under control, and slipping all. And the biggest mistake that a non-quarterback made in this game, in my opinion, because I guess Mayer's got to catch that ball, but that looked like it was a little too far out for the tight end. I mean, that to me, if I'm a quarterback's coach, that's on the quarterback. To me, you guys know I'm talking about the third down. But Tyree dropping that slip screen early in the game, that goes.
Oh,
that goes.
Yes.
That goes.
I went see. That's where I wish I was at the game so I could have seen the whole picture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean on that one, because it sounded like he had green grass all the way in front of him, and with his speed and dynamic,
he
it probably would have gone.
One guy miss, Vince. He would have had to make one guy miss, but it would have been 20 yards down the field.
Right.
That's
exactly.
my point. Right.
And he knew it. I mean, he was immediately hands on his head, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I banged Tommy Rees for his game plan, right? But that play call, that's how you get Chris Tyree involved in the game right there. And if he catches that, that's where you want Chris Tyree with the football outside in space, right? So that is a great play call. Tyree just has to catch it.
Right. No doubt. I thought Jaden Thomas made that great play on the outside, but we saw in this game, you take that play away, it was a great play. That's not where you're going to make your living against Georgia and Bama and plays like that. Where we saw him make a couple other plays, and there was other times he was open. There was another play early in the game that Jaden Thomas was wide open. The first time they punted, and he threw it to Jaden Thomas on the scramble. Sean, that might have been the play you're talking about earlier. He's got Jaden. No, you were talking about the Diggs play. He's got Jaden Thomas wide open coming out of the middle. I mean, just it's a seam right. He's wide open, and he missed him. But that's where Jaden Thomas made his money today, fellas. It was working from the slot, working from the middle of the field. That's where he's got to be.
And that's where he's best.
Yes.
Right? Because he's a mismatch. We talked
about this after the second game.
Right.
You got to get him in the slot because he is not a separator outside.
No, he's not.
He's just not.
But he's a mismatch with his size and everything on the inside.
He knows how to get open, and he's strong.
He's a different kind of a slot receiver. We all think of a slot receiver. You think of a little guy who's, can move around in space and all that. He's a different kind, but he can be a super successful slot receiver because of his mismatch physically. And he does a good job of running crossers and, things like that. And he can run away from guys like that because that doesn't involve getting off the line and doing, it's different, right? His skill set is as a slot receiver right now. And I think he can be super successful that way if they use him properly.
Yeah. Guys, it was nice to see Holden Stace get a catch today. We saw Tobias Merriweather playing a little bit. He actually ran a double clear out that got Stace. They're actually running a hitch with a wide fade, and BYU jumped the wide fade, which opened up Holden Stace. So it was good to see some other guys getting in the game. They didn't really get him the ball a ton. There were some questionable personnel usages where you're like, why are you in a double two receiver set and you don't have Lorenzo Styles, Braden Lindsey, or Tobias Merriweather on the field? But whatevs.
You mean like 29's on the field and everybody knows it's a run?
With 83. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We saw Deon Colesy get in the game a little bit in this game as well. So, we at least saw some other guys playing. I thought up front guys, I don't know. I didn't think any of the linemen played great. I just thought as a whole, they just played solid together. They played hard. I thought they stopped their feet a little bit too much in this game, which happens when you play a big defensive line.
Right. They had size.
That kind of goes back to what were the plays they had success with, right? I mean, like you come out that second half, and this is what they did on their first 3 runs. Mid zone, which bounces for 8. They ran a shovel pass, which went for 6. And then they ran a stretch play for 6. And you're like, you started to see BYU kind of get on skates a little bit. And then they kind of went away from it again. And then when they needed a big play, they went back to it late and got it. Like they ran one of the best calls that Tom Rees made was the toss play.
Yeah.
At the end of the game.
Yeah.
And that's where you should have been in this game.
Yep.
And that was in a situation where they knew you were running the football. Yep. You know what I mean? And you still got it. So, I felt like the line as a whole, even though I'll watch the film, Vince, Ryan and I will do the upon further review tomorrow, but I don't know. I didn't notice anybody stand out. I saw a couple great blocks. I just thought as a whole, they just played really well. And BYU's not a very good pass rushing team. And they did what a really good offensive line is supposed to do to a not really good pass rushing team. They never threatened the quarterback, with a couple exceptions of, where the coverage was good. So I thought as a whole, the offensive line played well. Anything in particular with the line anybody want to talk about from this game?
It seemed like Blake Fisher maybe had one of his more consistent games, right? Like going back to the all 22 film tonight and tomorrow morning, we'll be able to tell a lot more. But I didn't notice him in any negative fashions, which happens once or twice a game usually. But it seemed like Blake Fisher may have had one of his more consistent games. But I agree with you, Brian. Like, it wasn't any player from the broadcast view that you were just like, oh, he's just dominating reps, dominating. But it just seemed as a cohesive group, I think they played pretty well. But I'm interested to see how Blake Fisher fared in this game, because he just seemed a little more consistent.
He was physical in this game, I thought. I thought he's more physical in this game. And Sean, the Logan Diggs run, I mean, he's downfield just blowing up a linebacker like 5-6 yards down the field. I mean, that was a big part of it. Big part of it.
Yeah. The coming together as a group, I think they took another step as a unit today, and that's what we want them to do. That's what we were asking them to do. We knew it wasn't going to be as dominant as North Carolina. I mean, North Carolina, it was like 11 guys they pulled in from the parking lot, right? I mean, you're not going to be that dominant, but I thought the communication between the five was what took another step.
Yeah.
I do. And you're right about some of the fundamental things, but that could get cleaned up.
But my point, Vince, is that's going to happen when you're trying to move, when you're trying to run duo against a 320-pound nose guard.
Right. And BYU was like, hey, we're going to plug the middle. Like, that was their whole game plan. We're plugging the middle. And, Notre
Dame played right. And they still ran for a quote-unquote unimpressive 234 yards. Fellas.
Yes, exactly.
Now, again, they were helped by 79 yards on 2 runs late.
Okay.
But
still, I mean,
but that's the point.
That's when you close out games.
And BYU knew it was coming.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing in this game. BYU knew it was coming.
Yeah, and that's how you close out games.
And they were still able
to
get, they get 4 and 5 and 3 and 6 and then when they ran them out a little bit at the end of the game, they busted those 2 big plays over.
Right. Exactly.
And that was
I like where the offensive line is. They, question marks going in. Can the offensive line take another step? I thought they took another step as a unit, right? Again, you can clean up some of the fundamental stuff. I'm not even really all that worried about that at the moment. They took another step as a unit. That's where I needed them to be personally, what I was looking for. So I liked it.
Let's transition over the defense, fellas, because this was one of the weirdest games I have seen from a defense. I was literally writing down, like, early in the second half, Notre Dame had just scored to go up 25-6. I'm starting to kind of make notes of the post-game observations and different articles we're going to write, things like that. And I made a note, brilliant defensive performance. because at halftime, I mean, did you guys see the halftime stats? At halftime, Notre Dame had outgained BYU 259-67. I mean, that was as good of a first half of defensive football as you're going to find. I mean, that was really impressive. I mean, their only touchdown of that whole half came after a long punt return that set them up inside the 30-yard line.
Right.
I mean, just harassed Jaden Hall. Jaden Hall was 3 for 8 for 11 yards in the first half, and they needed to get to 4th down to get the only touchdown that they got in the first half. And I thought the line got pushed around on the first drive, the second drive. The first drive was the pick. In the run game, they got pushed around a little bit early, and then for some reason BYU kind of went away from that in the second quarter, and the pass rush took over. Second half, they weren't getting to the quarterback as much, but the big thing about the second half, fellas, is there are 3 things that I saw that bothered me, and I'll tell you, you guys give me your thoughts on it. Ryan, we'll go Ryan, Vince, Sean. Number 1, I thought the defensive line got pushed around way too much in the run game. I thought that I was puzzled on the 90-something yard drive as to why Tariq Bracy was not on the field on both third down conversions in that game. Which, I mean, I love Jaden Mickey, bright future. This was a bad game. I mean, on a third long, he's just running into a guy as the running back's running right by him. I mean, and then on the cover 2, like, that's not the kind of position I'm putting him in, to be honest with you, in that third, on that cover 2 where he's basically kind of running one-on-one with a guy and just gets beat. So I just felt like there was some puzzling stuff, and I felt like in the second half BYU adjusted and Notre Dame failed to adjust. And then you get to the final drive and they're giving up ground, but they stepped up and made the play. So I don't know if I've ever seen a greater change from half one to half two than what we saw in this game, in my opinion. Because even against Oklahoma State, guys, you started to see Oklahoma State move it in the second quarter, right? And but in this game, it was weird. I'm having trouble even coming to grips with what we saw. It was weird. It was weird. What are your thoughts on those things, Ryan?
There was an ominous lack of communication at times, especially in the second half. Like I felt like it was just adjusting the motion. Guys were in the wrong position. Multiple guys were running to the same spot, kind of pushing one another to different spots. And it just seemed like it was just really, I don't know if it was an adjustment thing for BYU. Again, that the film will be able to tell that a little bit better, but it just seemed like for whatever reason, defense was not on the same page on it. Like from a cohesive perspective, it seemed like they were kind of confused at what their responsibilities were at times. And I thought there was just a lack of communication just from a doing your job perspective too, Brian. Like, I mean, a couple of those, like that one ball that was completed late in the game when Tariq Bracy came up limp afterwards, right? I'm just like, there's just no communication, just passing off receivers, right? Like you vacate your zone. I'm not seeing much communication at end. I'm not seeing guys, aggressively pass off players. So it's just a lack of communication just during the play. And then I think from a from a pre-snap perspective, just seemed like guys just weren't really comfortable with the responsibility were to me, especially in the second half.
Yeah. They didn't adjust, Vince. They didn't adjust to the tempo at all.
No, they didn't. They didn't. And it was, I'll kind of piggyback off of what Ryan said. It felt like a lack of communication to me across the board on numerous occasions, and it made what was pretty decent, secondary play not good, right? Because individually, I thought some guys played pretty well in the secondary, but working together as a unit wasn't very good tonight.
Just busted plays. It was the same stuff against North Carolina, Vince. It was just you take away 3 plays of this game and Notre Dame destroys this team. But that's the same thing we said last week.
Right. And
except BYU's better than North Carolina.
And another either ill-timed or not well executed safety blitz got him again. Like, I think it's time to scrap the safety blitz at this point because they don't know how to do it, or the way that it's designed isn't working, because you can't leave the middle of the field wide open like that. I'm not saying that that's the way that play was designed, but that's what's happening. So I'm okay with no more safety blitzes the rest of the season. I don't know about you guys.
I don't know, unless it's Ramon Henderson. Sean.
Thank you. Yes. Look,
but he needs to start at linebacker depth, not at safety depth.
It's like every time they try to blitz from depth, it's almost like there is an NFL style that he's trying to bring to this defense. And it's like, stop. Because, that blitzing from depth is very much something you see a lot in the NFL that teams know how to do, and they know how to time it correctly. But, Ryan, you pointed out.
And they have dudes that can close ground a lot quicker, too.
Absolutely. And communicate. And, like, everyone's on the same page. Like, you're asking kids, and then I'm questioning when you're calling it. Like, why are you calling it there? Why now?
Right.
Like, you just went up and you're dominating this game. Force them to prove that they can go the length of the field. Don't give away a big play that gives them momentum. Because at that point in time, I think Notre Dame was up, 25-6?
Yeah.
So it's like, what are we doing? Like, there's no need to even do that. Just let your front four get after him. I think coming into this game, he was almost, I think his QBR when he was pressured was something like 55.
Yeah, it was not good.
Yeah, it was not good.
Like 30-some% of his passes or something like that. It's not good.
So it's like, it's just the timing of the call, Vince, of that blitz.
Yeah, right.
Like, no clue why you went to it there.
It feels like every time they call it, it's the bad timing. I don't know. Yes, Ramon Henderson's able to get home on those. Nobody else is. And so
don't call it.
Right. That's it.
Right.
And your inside linebackers don't know how to run that double inside blitz. They don't. Maris can get through, but the second linebacker never gets through. It's like, let's recognize what these linebackers can do what these safeties can do, what they do well, and stop calling things that you like to call as a coach because you think it fits. No,
Yes.
it
Call
Or
what they can
because
actually do.
schematically it makes sense.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Sean, I think that's where I'm feeling you, right? Like your points right now, because it's like, yes, it may look good on paper, but I don't know if you've got the guys to necessarily pull off some of the stuff that you're trying to pull off.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a little strange, you know, like some of the stuff you're like, okay, like I get the call that they made on the long pass for the touchdown. I get it. And it really makes sense, but you're asking an over-aggressive freshman to do that. A kid that every time Jaden Mickey's gotten beat this year like that, it's been on some kind of double move.
Yeah, right.
And we talked about this preseason. Like that was my big concern with Jaden Mickey is he's too aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting him like, yes, it was a terrible play by Jaden Mickey. But my thing is you shouldn't have put him in that position. And why is Tariq Bracy not on the field? You know, why wasn't Tariq Bracy on the field on the 3rd and 17? And that call didn't make any sense to me. Like, I understand protecting, but like you're playing everybody but like 3 guys like 15 yards off the ball. You let that running back get free. He's just making people miss. It was such a weird call. Like that right there changed the game. It was kind of like the Spencer Sanders missed sack at the end of the first quarter with J.D. Bertrand. Yeah. Like you make that stop on 3rd and 17. It's 25-6. They're punting from like their own end zone and you roll.
Right.
Yep. And I think that's the frustrating thing about this game is the defense did the defense did a great job of giving this team a big lead. And the offense missed a lot of opportunities to just it should have been 25-6 at halftime.
Absolutely.
And can I say again, why are you going for 2 at 18-6 in the second quarter?
I put it in the chat twice. Analytics.
Which it's still dumb. Right? Because then the game, that field goal at the end of the game, all of a sudden, or puts you up 9. Mm-hmm. And now they need 2 scores. It just you get tired of that. But I think what we're seeing, guys, from really on both sides of the ball tonight, when Notre Dame kind of had some issues, it's when they were trying to be too smart. And like I think it was Ryan or Vince, which one of you in the chat, Sean might have been you, was like they need to call timeout here because the defense is lost. I mean, they're looking around trying to communicate when the ball's getting snapped. In college, the tempo works differently a little bit in college, right? You've got to be prepared to line up and just have a call. And then if the offense looks to the sideline, then you get your call in, right? And so that's a mistake. That's something that Al Golden's going to have to learn is because teams are going to see this. Clemson's going to see this. USC is going to see this. And they're going to say Notre Dame likes to be real diverse and have all these calls and have an expansive game plan. When you go fast, they still try to do that and they're not lined up and not ready. And you can catch them. And you've got to be able to kind of, have it line up and say, hey, look, if they go tempo, you have a 3-by-1 check and a 2-by-2 check, and that's your check. You get to call in, and then when they look, you look. And then on offense, I mean, how many timeouts did Notre Dame waste in this game with that? Like, they came out early and went tempo and went right down the field. And then after that, it was like, let's line up and then look to the sideline. And you're doing that. Every team does that. Notre Dame did that constantly. Why? Because I got to make sure we get the right call in and get the perfect call in so I can kind of show how smart I am when it's like, dude, just get up there, line up, and run it down their throat or take a shot because what you then do is you let them get their calls in. And it's because you have 2 really X's and O's smart coordinators who kind of like to let everybody know how smart they are. And that's been the issue with this defense all season, guys. It was the issue against Marshall, right? They tried to get too cute and creative against Marshall, run some kind of pass scheme defense, and they ran it right at you. They did the same thing in this game, in the second half. First half, great. Second half, you didn't adjust.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big frustration that I had on defense. And the defensive line has got to figure some stuff out because this is third game out of 5 where a team has just leaned on them and ran it down their throat in the second half. Somebody's like, the D-line's gas. And I'm like, dude, they've been on – this was like late in the third quarter. Like, they've been on the field for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The offense had the ball plays the whole freaking game.
Yeah, the offense had the ball a bunch in the second half. What, they run like 8 minutes off the clock in the third quarter? Like, the defense was not gassed. They were getting dominated.
4-6 plays the whole game. BYU. The whole game.
Right.
That was a problem. It was it's frustrating. And again, now here's part of it. You didn't have Jacob Lacey in this game. You're not going to have him the rest of the year. You also didn't have Howard Cross, which we put on the message board about half hour before the game in our live chat that he heard he'd rolled his ankle this week and that he may not play. They tried to get him ready. He ended up not being able to play. But yeah, you were missing two guys. That's against the number 16 team in the country. That's going to have an impact, right? I mean, we can say that. I mean, we can chalk that up a little bit. Great learning experience for Gabriel Rubio. He did some nice things. He did some things that weren't so nice. Did you guys see the play where he just got destroyed, like blown up off the ball, pancake? But there was other times where he had a really nice push. He'll learn, right? He'll learn. And this is the kind of team a young guy like that's going to learn a lot about, because this is a very experienced offensive line. But overall, guys, I still say the biggest thing that frustrates me is the linebacker play. I'll say this, though. We were very hard on Jack Kaiser the last 2 weeks, rightfully so. This was his best game of the year by far. And not just take the safety out. Take the safety play out. I thought he was just good all game. He was the most aggressive linebacker in normal downs, coming downhill. He was good in coverage. The first third down that they forced, they were trying to throw an out cut to the tight end in the slot. He was all over it. I thought he played well, but for the most part, the starting linebackers just don't play well in space. I joked with you guys before the show, Sean. I'm going to kick it to you, and then we'll go to Ryan, because I just want to let Ryan let the linebacker vibes, build up in his body, because I know how fired up he is right now. But they need to just start running like their goal line defensive from a linebacker standpoint the whole game, because every team that Notre Dame plays in the goal line, when they get in the goal line, they need to get to like third and fourth down to score, because this team just does not let teams punch it in, because the linebackers explode downhill. We saw Maris do it. We saw Bo did it. I mean, Bo had a great
that was a great fill.
Blew the guy up.
Holy cow.
But then when they get out on the field, it's like this slow read, react, and they're just getting driven off the ball. They don't fill it all. I think it ties into what we discussed earlier. I think there's way too much on their plates at linebacker. And I just think they've got to limit what they're doing with those kids, because none of the starters are really playing aggressive. I still think, Prince Colley, now this is 2 games in a row where Prince Colley's been their most aggressive linebacker.
Right.
And base downs. But I don't know, Sean. I think it's the linebackers got to play well, but these kids didn't all regress in 1 year.
No.
Like they're worse than they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's concerning.
Well, it's not good. It needs to get better. And Mr. IB Chairman, I would like to give the rest of the allotment of my time to the Honorable Ryan Roberts. Go ahead, Ryan.
To the gentleman from New Jersey.
Right.
Any objections? Okay. The floor is yours. The floor is yours, Mr. Roberts.
Sean, you are
Representative Roberts.
You are too kind, my friend. You are too kind.
We're just going to unmute ourselves and let Ryan just go off. From the
I mean, honestly, I see a lot of people put it in the chat, but I agree with it completely at this point. I do. Prince Colley needs to start. I need to throw him in, let him play, and see what we got, man. It needs to happen at this point, because it's the recurring issue. It's the same thing each and every game. I've been the biggest Maris Loifel fan for the last 2 years, Brian. This kid, I mean, I don't want to be too critical, because he makes some plays still. But really, I mean, his best reps for me are when he's an on-ball Sam on the edge and he just reads and reacts. That's where he's his best,
or just
man.
Reacts. He has one job.
That's all it is, man. Like, it's simplified role he can work for, but it's just not clicking. I mean, he is taking bad angles to the football. He is taking on blocks that are unnecessary. He could slip
what you would call that?
Well, trying to be nice, man. This is PG-13.
He doesn't know how. The point is, he doesn't know how to take on blocks.
I know, man. I know. It's look, and JD came back in the second half. I thought his run fits were bad, if I'm being completely honest. Bo, he's the same Bo that we've seen for 5 years now. Like it's
he outplayed JD in this game, in my opinion. Though,
he did. I mean,
at least he's aggressive,
right?
Usually,
I mean, JD again. Like I just think the vision is just not there right now. He's not seeing the game, and that could be like partly he's missed 2 halves of football. Like it's a little tough kind of coming back with him and all that
the whole
stuff.
game.
But, yeah, I mean, really, honestly. But I mean, at this point, Brian, and I know it's like a little hot take-ish, and it's not what we're here for, but Prince Kali, man, like next game, I'd be like, Prince, you're starting, man. Let's see what you got.
Brian, that's
see
not
what
a
you
hot
roll
take,
with.
man. That's analysis of what's happening on film. I mean, a hot take would be like,
I feel like we're hitting our head against the wall.
Here's what would be a hot take. A hot take would be like, you need to start Jalen Sneed and start Junior Tuihalamaka and start somebody else we've never seen. That's a hot take.
Right.
Looking at the guy who's been their most aggressive, best playmaker the last 2 games, she needs to start is not a hot take. That's why I hired you. Because you're smart and you know defense and you can see things like that. So yes, I mean, maybe he's not as good in practice. Remember, you know how many times we've heard that last 10 years.
Sure.
But all I know is on Saturday, the last 2 weeks, he's been their most impactful linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about the sack, right? Because that was cleaning up somebody else's thing. I'm not talking about that.
Yep.
You know, if Jack Kaiser can play the way he did today, the rest of the year, he looked like the Jack Kaiser from last year.
Agreed,
today, fellas.
I thought he played pretty darn well. I thought he played pretty well. I mean, I do. He was making some plays. He was in on a lot of plays. The stuff where, and I think where people are thinking that he didn't play well, he was chasing a lot of things, but that wasn't his fault that he was chasing them. You know what I mean? Like he was trying to fill in for people, you know, trying to make plays where other people had messed up, right? I thought Jack had a good game. I did, and there's no reason to bench Jack Kaiser right now.
Yeah, and
well,
I saw Jack make the best run fill that I've ever seen him make as a stacked player. Right now, I mean, honestly, it has been so bad and inconsistent at linebacker. Next week, I'm playing base nickel, and I am throwing Jack Kaiser and Prince Kali out there and saying, we'll start the game out, see how you do. If it's not good, we'll keep rotating guys in. We're on a game-by-game basis of who starts at linebacker for me, and we'll see what the best fit. We'll see what the best set is at some point.
And they need to give Junior Tuihalamaka some mic snaps.
Yes.
Have to. I almost feel like Mike, you know, look, head coach needs, I think, at some point in time, step in and start forcing some of this stuff, because if you force them to play the younger guys, then it forces the coaches to simplify. Simple as that. I mean, one of the issues we had with Brian Kelly over the years was he would get too complex with his quarterbacks.
Sure. Yeah.
When were the exceptions to that?
Yeah.
2012 with a redshirt freshman to quarterback. 2015 with a redshirt freshman backup quarterback stepping in. And 2018 when Ian Book stepped into the starting lineup.
Right. And he was new.
Right. And they just ran pretty basic concepts, RPOs, quick outs, back shoulders, and occasional post route. I mean, that was really it. And he shredded, right? Because then it was just your dudes were better than their dudes, but you played to that.
Right.
Right. Like that's partly what made the 2017 and 2015 offenses so good, is they knew they had better dudes than the other team. And they just game planned to give their best dudes opportunities to make plays. And it wasn't about, let me show how smart I am. It was, my dudes are really good. Let me just turn them loose. And that's something that I think we need to see, because when teams play base offenses, like I have a feeling that Notre Dame is just going to defensively is going to look phenomenal next week. I do, because they're going to play a pro-style team that doesn't snap the ball quickly, that has no ability to really go tempo, and has a statue at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to make us look like, oh, hey, look, they figured it out. But then they're going to get into the Syracuse game. They're going to get into the Clemson game. They're going to get into the USC game against teams that can go tempo, and it's going to be the same issue. And that's my thing, is they've got to be able to handle that, because it's out there now. If you really want to get after Notre Dame, push the tempo. That's partly what created big mistakes against North Carolina. Yeah. It's what created big mistakes. And Marshall had some success with that at times as well. Cal's a pro-style team that didn't do that, and they ate them up, right? And Ohio State's not really a tempo team. But you know what Ohio State did in the second half? When they started running on Notre Dame, started going tempo. Started pushing the tempo a little bit and ran on them. The book is written now, fellas, and until they're going to have to make some adjustments if we're going to be prepared for that. And, the secondary it was a little maddening today, because they looked really good at times.
Mm-hmm.
And just like last game, there's just 3 or 4 plays where you're like, dude, what the heck? What are you doing? And that stuff's got to get cleaned up a little bit.
Seemed like Cam Hart had a decent game for the most part, right? Like he wasn't like noticeable. Which was good.
I thought he was pretty good against the run, Ryan. I thought he came downhill really hard. The only catch I remember him giving up was a no cover hitch route.
Yep.
To Keanu Hill. What that means for people to understand is, like, there's certain times where, depending on the coverage, you're not covering a certain zone. So if they were running a 4-yard hitch route, you're giving it to him, and he just rally and tackle him.
Generally think like cover 4, like you're giving
cover
up
3 or cover 4. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so that's what it was. But he immediately closed on Hill and tackled him as soon as he caught the ball. Right. So I thought Cam did well, and they didn't throw a Cam. I mean, they hardly. I don't remember them really challenging him, to be honest with you. The only time that I thought they had a chance to catch a ball on Benjamin Morrison, who didn't start this game, by the way. Did you guys notice that? They started their 4-2-5 personnel with Jack Kaiser at Rover, and they started Tariq and Cam.
They started Tariq, yeah.
Yeah, and which
paid off because Tariq got an interception on the first play.
And, Tariq is their best corner, right? He's been their nickel so far. But they had that one ball on that Puka almost caught on him.
Yeah.
But it was just a great throw and a back shoulder. He was there the entire time. He'll have to learn to play that a little bit better. But, and then I thought Clarence Lewis was solid, right? Almost had a pick six, right?
Should have had it.
And the reason that play happened was he beat the receiver to the spot and the receiver stopped. Like, that was great coverage. Even before the breakup, it was great coverage to put himself in that position to make the receiver basically just quit on the play. So there's some good things. I'm going to say this. This is who has been disappointing me lately. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Brandon Joseph was excellent in the game against Ohio State. He's underwhelmed me since, and he underwhelmed me today. His lack of aggressiveness coming up against the run today was frustrating me.
It surprised me, to be honest with you.
Sean, I saw your reaction. What are your thoughts on that?
No, because I remember him not at just Ohio State. He came up and made some really nice. I think it was the Cal game. He came off the edge early in the first half a couple of times for a couple of nice run stops. And I'm like, what has happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it goes back to, look, I don't know what they're asking him to do, but I know one play today, it was a big run they had. He basically just allowed the tight end just move him out of, take him totally out of the play. And it's like, you can't do that. Like, you have to come in, slash, get inside, force the runner outside, do something, man. You just can't allow this guy to block you out of bounds and give up that type of run. So, look, I don't know. I have absolutely no clue. But I know one thing. There are so many exotic things that they're trying to do. And I think in the first half, they did a lot of things similar to what they did with Drake May that caused Jaren Hall to hold the ball.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they were successful. Well, it's kind of like Tommy Rees. You have to expect that they're going to adjust to that.
Right.
So now, instead of being so exotic, let's be simple. Right? Let's just be simple. Just like against North Carolina, we're up on these guys pretty big. If we don't give up a big play, the game is pretty much over.
Yeah.
So I'm all
you don't give up, Sean, to your point. They don't give up that 3rd and 17, which then led to the 53-yard. This is a 40-something to 13 game.
Yeah, it's a blowout.
Right?
It's a blowout. And I'll say this. I was shocked BYU did not play like a 16th ranked team from a scheme standpoint. I thought they were very conservative. Almost like they just wanted to get the game to the fourth quarter. Like,
you know what I thought, Sean?
Let's just keep it close.
They coached Vince. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Their game plan early, like even the first pass by Jaren Hall, there was kind of a pressure, but not really. I think they came in with the D-line in their head before the game even started. I think they were so worried about the Notre Dame defensive line that they just came out thinking, I got to get rid of the ball quick.
Yeah.
And anytime someone did get near Jaren Hall, he acted like he had 3 dudes in his face.
Right.
I think they were a little shook by the play of the D-line early from a pass game standpoint. I think they knew this D-line can be run on, but this D-line is 2 different teams when it comes to run versus pass.
Agreed.
Other than the North Carolina game, somewhat of the Cal game, but Cal's not really a great rushing team. Their offensive line just stinks.
Yeah.
But they're a much better pass rushing team right now than a run stopping team. And I felt like I think that kind of maybe Vince played into the conservatism a little bit. Like to Sean's point, I think that was part of it. Maybe that was part of it too, was they seemed to be really worried about the Notre Dame defensive line. They really did.
Yeah, and you're talking about that first play from scrimmage. I mean, yes, there was kind of somebody in his face, but not really. He could have still stepped into that throw. He threw it off his back foot, which is why it was so badly underthrown and allowed Tariq Bracy to intercept it. But he could have stepped into that throw. I mean, it wasn't that much pressure. I don't think anybody actually touched him on that play, if I remember correctly, maybe after he released it, but he could have stepped into that throw. And I think you're right. I think Notre Dame's front was in his head before they even started the game. He was. So remember we talked about Drew Pine trusting his offensive line, and then last year Jack Cohn was not trusting his offensive line. Now I think it looked like Jaron Hall didn't really trust his O-line. He was anticipating the rush, and it showed in his passing game. And he was the second best quarterback out there tonight because of it.
Yeah, Notre Dame in this game, there was a lot of comments on YouTube channel guys that said, well, BYU has the better quarterback. Not tonight.
Not tonight. They didn't. No, absolutely not.
Is Jaron Hall a better player than Drew Pine as of right now for the course of their career? Sure. Yeah, he is. Yeah. Today, Notre Dame had the best quarterback on the field, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
You take away, two big plays. Jaron Hall threw for 120 yards tonight, fellas. I'd say about 80% of that yardage came on 2 completions. Right? Drew was the better player tonight. Here's the thing. Drew was the more poised player tonight. Now, in fairness, Drew was going up against a defensive line that could not sniff him in most instances, and Jaron Hall was going against a defensive line that was getting in his face. And I thought, we talk about the D line. Jason Adamiola had a little bit of an up and down game early on. They were kind of pushing him off the line, but when he needed to step up and make some plays, fellas, he made 2 huge plays in this game. One was the goal line stop where he just blew up the line and then forced the early cutback, and then Justin, his brother, cleaned it up. And then that play he made on that 4th down stop, guys, that was one of those things. What do we always say, Sean? Or actually, I'm going to kick this one to Ryan. One of the things we've talked about all summer on our show, Ryan, was, the stars got to play like stars. Right. And one of the things we didn't see in the first couple games from the defense is sometimes you're not playing well. Right. But that's okay. But when the game was on the line, who steps up and makes a play? We didn't see that the first 2 games. We've seen that in recent games. And we saw that today from Jason Adamiola, that somebody needed to step up and make a stop in that game. And Jason, on that last drive, just said, hey, whatever's the call, I don't know, whatever the call is, but you're not blocking me on this play. And that's what you need to be a great team, is when the game is on the line. We saw Mayer do it. Michael Mayer was by far the best player in the field today, regardless of the team. It wasn't close. There's no other discussion. But on defense, when a play needed to be made, Jason was the guy that stepped up today and did that. And, that's what you need, fellas, to win games like this. And that won them the game. Because, that basically put the game away. It allowed the offense to then go put the game away. And then the offense responded by doing – and here's something else that encouraged me today. Ryan, I'll let you speak on that about Jason. I'm sorry. I was getting ready to move on to something else, but I was setting you up for the Jason comment. Needed him to step up. Somebody needs to step up and make a big play in crunch time. And today, Jason was that dude.
Well, and I think offensively, Brian, there's not a big question of who's the guy that brings the juice, right? It's Michael Mayer and it's a couple of the running backs. Defensively, I still have kind of been looking for who's the guy, right? That you can count to make a big play that is going to just bring this energy to the team. I think at times it could be Isaiah Foskey. I think at times it could be Cam Hart when he makes a big play. I think at times it could be Brandon Joseph. But I think consistently when Jason Adamiola is playing good football, I think it's him, man. I think that he's the de facto leader on this defense. I really do. I think that he's the guy that brings the juice. You saw just the energy that was just kind of pumped into the sideline, into the defense when Jason was able to make a couple plays. So good for Jason. We've needed it more over the first few games that we've gotten, but in this game he came to play, and I think that it really did have kind of an infectious feeling to it at times during especially in the biggest moments, obviously, for the plays he made.
Sean, I want to ask you this. I thought for the first 2.5 games of the year, Jason was inconsistent. At times he was good, at times he wasn't. Second half of the Cal game, he played really well. And I think he's been really playing very well since. I mean, I thought he was very good against Carolina, and I thought he was very good tonight for the most part. I think the light kind of went on for him, I think, in the second half of that Cal game. And I think he's been what we hoped he would be the last couple games, and especially today.
It's funny because on that fourth down, BYU calls timeout. And if you watch, they go to the sideline, and Coach Freeman says something to Jason Adamiola. I don't know what he said, but he said something to Jason Adamiola. They come back out, and then they get the big stop. And I think on that play as well, I think Nana he collapsed the end.
It was one of the few good plays he had. He had a rough night setting the edge tonight, but he was good on that play as well.
He was good on that play. And when you're a head coach, that's what you do. You go to your guys like, hey, look, we need you right here.
Yeah.
We need a play. I was shocked because it wasn't like it was 4th and 1. It was kind of like 4th and 1.5, more closer to 2. And the fact that BYU came out with their quarterback and decided to depend on the run in that situation, I was really shocked, especially the formation they came out in. I thought they would try to spread them out a little bit more and maybe give themselves, 2 options to run or pass. But it was almost like they created, going back to what you said, they put Notre Dame in a goal line situation, which Notre Dame is good at against the run.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like they went to the strength of Notre Dame against the run.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know if that was the best thing to do. I would have spread them out.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they decided to do that and went to the T for the defense. And, of course, 57 came away with the big play. That's what you need, on a team. Any team. You need your guys to make plays, especially in the fourth quarter. And they did what they had to do. And then the offense was able, like Vince said, look, it was 2 big runs late, but that's impressive. When teams know that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And Vince, that came from leaning on them because, again, I didn't love the game plan. I didn't love the running strategy, but I thought the offensive line played hard. Even when they weren't necessarily moving their feet, they played hard. And that's what a good offensive line is supposed to do is you wear them down, you wear them down, and
they did.
Boom.
And they did that. They wore them down. And that was, let's talk about that big play for Estime, right? The big one at the end. He kind of hit the middle of the line and then bounced it outside. I mean, the defensive line and the linebackers for BYU, they just kind of stalemated it. You know what I mean? They weren't really going at it. They
kept the body on a body, though, man.
They just kind of stalemated it, and then Notre Dame kind of just stalemated them back, and Estime was able to bounce that. And so that play was supposed to go up the middle, but he was able to bounce it and make a big play out of it. And somebody in the chat said, sometime I said that Estime isn't a big play back. I don't even know why I would ever say that, but Estime is a good back.
You said it, Vince. You said it. I heard it.
I was sharing with them the conversation. No, I don't know that you've ever said that. I was sharing with them a conversation I had with somebody, and maybe they thought that you were the person that said that. A friend of mine this week, and it wasn't Vince, that said he didn't think Estime was a big play back. And I asked him, well, why do you think that? He goes, well, he hasn't ripped off any big runs. And I said, well, do you think Chris Tyree is a big play back? And he's like, well, yeah. I mean, Chris Tyree has 2 90-yard plus touchdowns in his career, right? He's like, well, yeah. I said, well, what was the big plays Chris Tyree's made this year? I was like, well, big plays come from blocking.
Yep.
And from a scheme, a defense that doesn't put 9 in the box the entire time post snap. Because, it's like,
unless you're Kyron Williams against North Carolina.
Right. But what we saw in this game, though, guys, is that they made enough plays up the seam on offense that it was harder for the BYU safeties to kind of come down at times in the second half. And that's what I kind of got frustrated by the run scheme was, you missed on some opportunities to really gash them with the run.
Yep.
But what I like about it is, look, in Tommy Rees's defense, right? Like, let's pretend this first 2 games didn't happen. And let's say that Notre Dame just went to 3-0 on the season, right? And I'm just trying to make a point here. You had 2 really good, well-designed and well-called games against Cal and Carolina, right? He didn't have a well-called game today. But coaches are going to have bad games too fellas.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And what you need is you need in those instances, you need your players to step up and say, hey, coach, I don't really care what you call. We got this. And end of the day, guys, I think we saw that. We saw that on offense really for a lot of the game, and we saw that on defense when it mattered most. It's like, hey, coach, I don't really care what you call here, but I'm going to make this play. So just maybe call something that gives me a chance to make this play, you know? And that's why Notre Dame just beat the number 16 team in the country and really controlled the action. I'm not going to lie. I got a little nervous at the end. I'm not going to lie. I did when they couldn't put them away, but they controlled the action for majority of the game and got the win. So it was a good win, fellas. Anything you guys would like to add before we move on to answering the super chats? And I do have a couple comments I want to make about some other things before we go to the super chat as well. Anything else that you guys want to discuss? Okay, I'm going to say something else. You know what else made this a great day? Notre Dame goes away from home.
Say it.
And gets a W over a ranked opponent.
Say it.
And looked good doing so. And LSU got curb stomped today. Another top 10 game and another blowout by your boy BK.
And they just have to coach better. That's what they just have to coach better, Brian.
Started the day off wonderfully well, fellas.
Really did.
It's like I keep saying this. I'm gonna say it again. I tried to warn you. You didn't want to listen. Y'all didn't want to listen. Is that petty? Heck yes. You know what?
Absolutely.
I don't care. Because it's also truth. It's also truth. So Notre Dame beats a ranked opponent. You know, and Brian Kelly got blown out.
Hey,
and the special teams were.
They got out coached.
Yes, they did.
Not including him though.
No. But their assistants got out coached.
Yes.
He takes no responsibility whatsoever.
No.
That.
Although his special teams coordinator needs to take a lot of blame for this too. Just saying.
No, hold on. I was told on good authority on a show I was on this offseason that they have a great special teams coach at LSU.
Well, maybe they used to.
So I'm just saying. And then did anyone else enjoy watching Oklahoma get beat 49-0? I wonder what that recruiting pitch is going to be like to the some Notre Dame commits now. With
dude, I can't believe they didn't score.
That was
bad at all. Like zero.
Sean, they started running the Wildcat, dude. It was that bad.
Well, I was watching the game, and I told Brian earlier when I saw them run the Wildcat and run it down Texas' throat, get to like the 15-yard line, and then try a pop pass from the Wildcat. I'm like, okay.
What was that?
I'm like, okay.
Texas hadn't stopped it all drive, Sean. They hadn't stopped it all drive.
I'm done.
I'm like, that's enough. I've seen enough.
That was really bad. Yeah, that was like Ryan. You made a point when we previewed this game yesterday. Like you had said, like you thought Texas could blow them out, but you thought it would be closer because it was a rivalry game.
Yep.
That team showed up today with no soul. It's not even that Texas took their soul; they didn't have one to begin with. It was bad.
And that's where you start getting really nervous for Brett Venables too, Brian, because it's like at least you want to see some fight, right? Because he's still getting the guys to buy in, right? And then it's like. They showed up and looked like that, man, in a rivalry game in the Red River, whatever they call it now, shootout.
The Red River Shootout, man. On Irish Breakdown, it's the Red River Shootout, okay?
I grew up with the Red River rivalry.
That's what I grew up with, too.
Yeah. You didn't, Vince. We're the same age. You just don't remember it.
I always call it the Red River rivalry because I can never say it. And it always just like, blah, 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 blah. So, but hey, I'm all about not being politically correct. So if we're going to call it a shootout,
was like
what did that? What was that noise?
Like? I think I lost you for a second there. I didn't
not repeating that. You can just push rewind 20 seconds and hear it again.
Don't worry. We have it on film. So
it's all right. You can live in infamy.
How many more conference wins are on their schedule, though? Let's keep it real. They haven't faced Baylor yet. They haven't faced Kansas yet. They haven't faced Oklahoma State yet.
Yeah. Sean, you and I were talking about this, and I'm going to read it to you. This is what they have left. Home against Kansas, at Iowa State, home against Baylor, at West Virginia, home against Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech.
I see one win in there for sure.
Yeah. Maybe. Which one would that be?
West Virginia.
At West Virginia? I don't know.
I mean,
West Virginia is a really weird team. They look really good one game, and then they look like garbage the next.
Fair enough.
They're a strange team.
Can we talk about how bad? Can we talk about how bad the Big Ten is outside of Ohio State? It's a pretty bad conference this year.
Yes,
rough.
It really
really
is.
bad.
Illinois, baby, the Fighting Illini.
Did they beat Iowa?
The alma mater of Sean Davis. They got a
You
W
didn't watch
tonight,
the
man.
game, Ryan? DeVito got
I saw
hurt
it was like 9-6. I didn't know who won.
Yeah, and we had to suffer through Sikowski for like.
I did see he was in the game. I didn't know why, but yeah.
I remember watching his film as a junior, and I'm thinking this guy has a phenomenal arm, and then I realized he has no clue how to read a defense.
That's Rutgers' great Arthur Sikowski.
Bad. Guys, let's get to some super chats here at the end of the show. We have a lot of super chats coming in, and we want to thank everybody and get to these questions. And so Sean Stewart started things off. Thank you, Sean. It wasn't pretty at times, but we used the three-headed monster at running back, and Mayer is nasty. Halloween came early. Go Irish. So, yeah, Sean, it was. And I think we did. Look, I didn't think Chris Tyree played well tonight, right? I thought he had an off game. And now, people that have been waiting on him to not play well are just killing him in the chat. But Chris Tyree was pretty darn good the last 2 weeks. He had a bad game. Yeah. But what is so good about this backfield is you don't need a guy can get banged up for a game like Logan or be sick like Logan Diggs was, or a guy can have an off night tonight like Chris Tyree did. And other guys step up. Last week, all three of them stepped up and balled. This week, Chris had an off game, so the other guy stepped up. And that's why it's important to have depth at a position, right? So, if one guy has an off night, hey, you're all right, because the other two guys pick you up. And there's going to be games down the road where Estime has a rough game and Tyree and Diggs pick him up, or Diggs has a rough game and then Tyree and Estime pick him up. That's what I love about this backfield. And that's why we said coming into the season, fellas, that we thought this could be a top 5 backfield by the end of the season. And they're definitely starting to show that the last 3 games.
They got depth.
There's no doubt about it. Notre Dame had an unimpressive 234 yards rushing today. And it's not like you can say it was because the quarterback ripped off 80 yards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that shows what this team is capable of, right? Not a well-schemed game, executed okay. And then you look at the box, you're like, oh, they rushed for 234. All right. Even if you take the 79 away, guys, that's still a pretty good night when you consider they also lost 3 yards at the end on taking a knee. So, they did what they needed to do. I was impressed by it.
It's crazy that all 3 of them could be back next year too if they wanted to, which is pretty nuts.
And you get Jadarian Price back next year,
and the freshman coming in,
and Michael Mayer. Oh wait, he's not.
Yeah, don't even convince.
I saw that in the chat.
Yeah, not happening, fellas. Zach Martin with a super chat. Thank you, Zach. A little too conservative on O in the second half. D-line looked a bit tired in the second half too. We'll adjust post-Lacey, but overall, good W against a ranked team. I would like to see them get over the BK sit on Leeds offense a bit. I agree with that. I thought they came out in the second half, fellas, and I really liked their coming out of halftime series. I did. I thought we didn't talk about that a lot during the show, but you come out of halftime, you're up 18-6, and the offense goes right down the field and scores. I mean, it was like 7-yard gain, 8-yard gain, 6-yard gain. And then you have 6, and then you have the -6 on the screen. And then so what do? They convert a 3rd and 13, and then you have the play to estimate that goes for 13, then a 3-yard run, a 1-yard run, and then 3rd and 6, you hit the climb route to Mayer for a touchdown. But then after that, you come out and you kind of get a little bit conservative, and it's like milk the clock, and it's just like I want to see a team with a little bit of a killer instinct.
Yes.
At the same time, however, if I'm trying to put a game away, do you really want to put it on the shoulders of your 3rd starting game quarterback, Drew Pine, who kind of threw a pick? Or do you want to say we're going to ride what we believe is the best part of our offense, which is the offensive line? So I understand what Zach is saying to a degree, guys, but I think the way the game was playing out, I'm riding the offensive line there. Be honest with you. And even on the 3rd and 3, there were guys open, and just the quarterback didn't make the play on that second 3 and out, and so I understand where you're coming from, and I agree to a degree, fellas. And if you guys disagree with me, let me know, please. But I understood it a little bit. Yes, it was conservative. I get it. And I didn't like what they called, but I liked the principle of let's put this game on the back of our 2 best units, which is our offensive line and our running backs. Units. Best players, Michael Mayer. I'm talking units. But when they needed to play in the pass game, they tried to go to Mayer, but he was getting double and triple teamed by that point in time. So I understood it, to be honest with you. I did. I didn't have a problem necessarily as much with it as I normally would have.
Yeah. Well, I nominate the worst call of the night, the attempted screen pass to Michael Mayer in the last.
Oh
that was awful. Yes. That was just bad.
It's out of
that
a
was the worst.
timeout,
You were
too.
fourth
You
and
were
one.
rolling too, man. You were rolling like you didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's out of a timeout.
Coming out of a
And it was
timeout.
so
That's the
obvious.
best.
Yep, out of
It
a
was so
timeout.
obvious. Like he motions outside, and it's like, y'all know what's coming.
Right.
Like as soon as he went outside, I was like, oh, they're gonna run him inside on the screen. You just
It's
knew
third
it.
down, Bryant. They're going to double him no matter where he
Sean,
is.
they quintuple covered him. Did you see when they threw him the ball? Like there was like just 5 black jerseys out of nowhere. On, I was like, come on now.
They
That's
what?
where you got to
They
use them as a decoy,
quintuple?
man. See,
Quintuple covered him.
somebody else
Five
needs
dudes.
sound effects in this show.
Yeah, at least
I like it.
Got to do it, man. Got a super chat from Tyler Binge. Really sick of the NBC coverage. Glad for the win, but lots to clean up in the red zone. Okay, so this is the first game all season that I listened to the coverage. Oh my Lord, it's awful.
Jason
Yes.
Garrett's
Can
terrible,
you please?
bad.
Can you
So bad.
and Jack Collinsworth? Can you please for once get the down and distance correct? He's like, it's 3rd and 5, and I'm like, that ain't 5, partner. I don't know who's the spotter you have, but your spotter needs to get fired immediately because in Jack's defense, he's getting fed that. Right,
Right.
Right, Vince. I mean, that's how it
but
works.
here's
right?
the other
There's a
thing.
spotter.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, when I do games, I don't have a spotter. I am the spotter, right?
But you know that at
But
that level, they have
if
that.
somebody's putting it in my ear, I also have eyes, and I can see the
No
Okay,
argument. No
because
argument.
when you're on the home side as the announcer, right? And
Mhm.
where are the chains? They are on the visitor's side,
Mhm.
right in your line of sight.
Right.
You can see what the down and distance are.
Right, and there's a
And-
difference between 5 and 3. It's a pretty
There's a
obvious
huge
difference. between 5 and 3.
Is the marker halfway between the first and the like? Come on, man! Like you can tell where the down marker is compared to the first. You know, come on! Like this, it's just bad. But that speaks to his lack of experience.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't call games, and so he
Right.
has no idea what to look at and how to call a game. He has no idea.
And it's just
He's-
NBC
he's-
constantly using Notre Dame as their JV team to get guys ready for the big leagues.
Yeah.
Jack
Sunday night
Collinsworth is
football.
still better than Jason Garrett, though. So that's all I have
Look,
to say.
I have one thing to say, Jason Garrett. NBC Notre Dame, I understand you guys probably come to some type of agreement to not have a homer doing color in the booth, more of a national guy, and that's fine. But somebody needs to call NBC and let him know one thing he's not going to do moving forward is continually say Notre Dame doesn't use its wide receivers. You know, we have recruits watching this broadcast,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, seriously.
Like you don't want to come here, you know, if you're wide receiver because they don't use their wide receivers. But if you're a tight end, yeah, come to Notre Dame. If you're an offensive lineman, come to Notre Dame. Like, what are you doing right now? Relax, man. Somebody
With
needs
no
to go
context.
yes.
With
Yeah,
no
exactly.
context.
Exactly.
Like, please go pull him out of the booth right now.
Hey,
like, what? Shut up.
Last time I checked, Mike Mayock is unemployed. Get him,
Yes.
get
Get
his
him
butt
back.
back in the booth.
Yes.
I still
Yeah.
can't believe there were fans that didn't like him as a color guy. I will
Oh.
never understand that.
Oh,
Mayock's good,
Mayock
man.
he was much better than anyone they've had since then.
Yep.
By
Absolutely.
1,000 miles.
Yep.
And he's a draft guy, so we speak the same language. So it's
Right.
great.
No one's perfect.
Sand in the pants and
Yeah. Joe Papiti with a super chat. Joe, thank you very much. He goes, I know what the story will be. BYU is overrated. More importantly, is Bracey okay? And what do you think Mayer was referring to about locker room camaraderie? So,
Well-
Sean, you listened to the press conference. Did he say anything about Tariq in the press conference? About what happened to him? Did he just
said
was
it
it a hamstring?
he felt like it was a slight hamstring twinge.
Okay.
It's the exact word he used. And he
Okay.
said he'll know more. He'll probably be out
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You see,
it did look good.
and let him take care of it because as you can
Right.
see, Ohio State tried to rush their guy back,
Yep.
and now he's missing more games. So
Yep.
the hamstring, don't mess with it.
With what they've got coming up,
Yeah,
just let them rest, man.
let him
Just
rest.
Let them rest.
You're good enough
You-
to win the next 3 games.
Yeah.
I'll say this, Sean. At the very least, the next 2 for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
If he's a quick healer and he's back, whatever, for Syracuse. But even then, it's like that's a running team, right? Like, yeah, I'm with you. Get him healthy because you're gonna need him to. You don't need Tariq Bracey to beat Stanford and UNLV and
No.
And
Syracuse.
he's been their best
Yes.
corner, and it's
Yeah.
not even really an argument. So you're going to need him back. You're going to need him back for the big games. So
you're going to need him to beat USC and Clemson.
You could tell that Tariq was distraught.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
You could tell he was distraught.
Absolutely.
You know, he came up lame, hamstring. So get healthy. Get healthy.
No doubt about it. And then as far as the locker room camaraderie,
I don't know what Mayer was talking about, man.
Well, maybe they used the wrong word.
No, I don't think
you don't think so. You think that there was division in the locker room?
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I'll as best I can without giving away confidences. There were things that you'd heard during camp about not everybody was on the same page. Not everybody was, because what did it follow? What did that comment follow? It followed Mayer being asked about his individual performance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Catherine Tappan, I thought, really masterfully tried to set him up to talk about his performance. She said, look, I know this is a big win. And she she did the team thing. And I know this is, but what about your game? And he wasn't having it. So I thought Catherine did a really nice job trying to set him up for what she wanted him to talk about, but Mayer wasn't having it. And he immediately went to the team. Now, if anybody knows anything about Mayer, and I'll share some confidences, because there are things I don't think people would mind me saying. But one of the things I've heard about Michael Mayer is he is truly a great leader in his football team. I've heard from young players that like Mayer will go show, like during the summer, Mayer would show up in a dorm room of one of the freshmen, like, hey, let's go. You're working out with me today. Like seriously. And like, hey, I'm working with you today and you need to push me today. And I'm going to push you today with young guys. And not even young guys that were young tight ends, but like just knock on the door of a young linebacker. Hey, man, you're working out with me today. You're doing a great job. So you're going to work out with me today because I want you to push me like you push the other guys. That's leadership. And he's very much a team guy, not just and of all the players in the team, he is the one that has the most right to be like me.
Right.
It's the complete opposite of who Michael Mayer is. And I've heard that there has been some issues in the locker room with guys who seem to be more focused on their thing. And there were some guys that weren't necessarily buying in to the way they're doing things. And that was creating some friction. And then when, of course, they lost the first two games, there were guys, that were doing a lot of finger pointing and, and people saying, well, the previous staff, A, B, C, and D. And some of the veterans were not happy about that. And so that's about all I can say on it. But Vince, I can understand why you think that.
And that's fine.
Because I haven't shared this with you.
You have more information than I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I do think there's some legitimacy to that, which then led to why that team looked like they looked the second game of the year, in my opinion. And I've heard some of that stuff has been kind of pushed out, but there's still some of it there. There's still some guys that are in their feelings about they think they should be playing X amount of snaps. I mean, dude, we just saw Jacob Lacey.
I was going to say somebody just left. So
right. So. And that's not a shot at Jacob. It just, look, Jacob's obviously his priority is not team-oriented as much as it's Jacob-oriented, which,
okay,
right or wrong, it's just the reality of it. Some people are going to think it's okay. Some people won't. It's not the point. And so I think there was some of that they're still trying to weed out of the program, to be honest with you. And there's some older players that I'll just say that people aren't going to be upset that they're leaving. And not necessarily like stars, just some older guys that just, and I'll leave it at that. So I think was his point, and some of that's being pushed out a little bit, and they're having more of a team-oriented type of thing, and that's what I think his point was today. And I think to his point, I think this is what was so good about this game, fellas, is when the offense was struggling to put BYU away early, the defense stepped up and made plays. When the defense struggled in the second half, the offense came out, gave them some distance early, made the big plays late. Like both sides picked each other up at times in this game. And in the past, we haven't seen this team do that a lot. And that was something that I was very encouraged by from today. Next super chat from Noop Life 007. Thank you very, very much for the super chat. What is it going to take for the coaches to give Collie more playing time? He looks way better than Bertrand or Lou Fowl. Ryan, I'm going to kick that over to you.
What's it going to take? I mean, I hope it's not a trust thing that we keep hearing about like wide receiver. I mean, but
can we explain what trust actually means to the coordinators at Notre Dame, fellas? Can we? No, because we all know what the answer is.
Yeah.
The trust is, do you know all of the volume of my scheme?
Right. On
the board and on the practice field. That's trust to them. And that trumps the fact that what guys do on Saturday. Let's be honest about it. That's what that means.
Yep.
Anybody want to disagree with that? You're allowed. Does anybody want to disagree with that?
I do not.
No.
And yes. So anyway, Sean. So hopefully, I mean, Ryan, please continue. But I wanted to make sure we're defining the terms here.
It's really weird on the defensive side of the ball a little bit too when we're talking about Prince Collie, because I mean, offensively, Tommy Rees has been there, right? Like, he's been the offensive coordinator for a few years now. Al Golden, although there's still fundamentally some things that Marcus Freeman was doing at Notre Dame last year. Well, actually, no, that doesn't even fit. Forget it. Reverse what I just said, because regardless, Prince Collie was here last year too, with under Marcus Freeman. So the continuation, it's just kind of weird because you have a first-year defensive coordinator. I would think that there wouldn't be these long leashes at linebacker, especially, right? Because it's like, it's your first-year defensive coordinator. Get your guys on the field. And I mean, honestly, like I mean, if you listened to earlier in the show, I don't know if you were in here, Noop Life, but like it's something where I would be on a week-to-week basis of like, hey, who are my best 2 to 3 linebackers last game? That's who's playing this week. Who was my best 2 to 3 linebackers this whole week of practice? That's going to get a lot more reps this week. Like it would just be, I don't want to call it an audition, but like it's a weekly synopsis and a weekly evaluation period to figure out who's going to be the starting caliber unit right now. Because to Brian's point, and I love how you highlighted it, Brian, there should be no trust at this linebacker unit right now. Like, you shouldn't have these favorites right now. There should not be anybody on there, from J.D. Bertrand to Bo Bauer to Prince Collie. I'm advocating for Prince Collie, but like I'm not saying that he should have this long leash. What I'm saying is that I think he's earned the right to get more playing time, to get an opportunity. Let the players that are playing the best ball get the opportunity. If it doesn't work, keep evaluating. That's where I am with it. That's where I am.
Yeah, what has J.D. Bertrand done to be at that level?
I'll tell you what he's done, and I don't necessarily agree with this. I'm just going to play devil's advocate because I don't disagree with your guys' take. From everything I've been told, JD is absolutely one of their best leaders. Like, off the field, in the locker room, in the dorms, and he's really smart. He gets guys lined up.
Yeah.
But and I think that's part of the issue in the second half is you haven't had him, and then he's kind of thrust in. He hasn't played a lot the last couple weeks, and he didn't respond well to it. That's why JD plays. I'm not saying that's enough, because at the end of the day, Sean, it's kind of like that's the explanation we used for why Joe Schmidt played over Niles Morgan and Greer Martini, right? And at the end of the day, if the playmaking is not happening, then that's not enough. But I'm just saying that is why. I'm not saying that I agree that it should be enough, but that's why he's getting a little bit of a longer leash than maybe some other guys would in this instance.
You do know that Prince Collie knows that he's better, right?
Well, and that's the problem. And that was the issue back with Niles and Greer back in 2015, Sean, was like,
Ryan, you don't have to chuckle, Ryan. You don't have to chuckle. You can just
I'm just listening to you spew knowledge, man. I'm not just listening.
No, and that's where you can have some of the issues in the locker room is like, yeah, okay, you want me to be a team guy, but I'm watching that dude play, and I know I can do better than that.
Yeah.
And I'm busting my tail, I'm doing everything you tell me to do, and I'm not getting that opportunity. But Prince has played well the last 2 games, and they are getting him more reps, and hopefully that when they break down the film, they say, hey, look, 10's playing really well when he gets in there. Because, guys, there needs to be this too, and this is where the trust thing really kind of ticks me off is, some guys are just not great practice players.
Yep.
And some guys are great practice players. At the end of the day, the film that should matter most is not what you do on Tuesday and Wednesday, it's what you do on Saturday. And the reality is the last 2 weeks, the guy that did the best on Saturday was number 10.
Yes.
It's simple as that. And if he can't run the full scope of your defense, then limit the scope of your defense.
You know what I know, though, is even if he doesn't run the full scope of your defense, he's going to play with his hair on fire every single snap, dude.
That's right.
Like, he's going to run through a brick wall. I know that about Prince Collie.
No doubt. Maltavius with a super chat. Thank you, sir. I love the IB hat he has on his son in that photo. That is excellent. Indy dominated this game. There is no doubt about that. However, do you think that Tommy Rees and Al Golden can improve on second half adjustments? Go ahead, Vince.
They can improve. I thought, like you said, I thought the offense did a good job coming out on their first series. I thought
that was a great series.
I thought that they did a great job. Those were adjustments, right?
Yeah.
I thought BYU made some good adjustments too against the defense that I do not think made very good adjustments this time around. Now, I think that they've made good adjustments in the past this season in the second half. They didn't do it today. So you can take something from this and learn from it, and that's fine. But today was a bad second half adjustment for the defense. I will say that.
Yes, agree. Yeah, I agree with you, Vince. I do think that the offense adjusted at halftime.
Yeah.
I thought there were some misses by the quarterback on reads. I thought there were some off-target throws, some draw, some different things that happened. I don't think it was a bad game plan. I don't think there was no adjustment second half. I just think it was a conservative game plan.
Right. And
but there was clear adjustents to what they were doing.
Adjustments, and I would have kept my foot on the gas a little bit longer offensively. No doubt about that. But to Sean's point earlier, they still executed the tamped down offense and still got first downs, and they still did what they needed to do. I just wish they would have put it in the end zone.
Agreed.
And that's not just because I had the over in a parlay. They should have put it in the end zone to put this team away.
Agree. Next super chat, Casa Hodge. I'll say something back to this. I will say, guys, that there has been, I thought the Cal game, they did a great job of second half adjustments on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. I think there have been second half defensive issues in each of the last two games. I will say that. It wasn't just because what we have to do is we have to be careful as analysts not to take one game and try to turn it into a big picture issue when sometimes it's just you didn't do well that game.
Right.
I think we saw it against Ohio State. We saw it against Marshall. We saw it against North Carolina, and we saw it against BYU. The anomaly is the Cal game.
Yeah.
Right. And so, whereas I think the offense, I thought, did really well in the second half of the North Carolina game last week. Had some adjustments and did well with certain adjustments this game. I mean, we went through the plays they ran. There was a difference. Early in the game, they were in a duo and power. They were literally running power, guys. Did you see that? Like Davis Sherwood started this game, right? And they were running power O and duo. Like, what? This is not the game I'm implementing power O. Like, you should have done that last week against last game against that terrible defensive line at North Carolina, or next week against Stanford's soft defensive front seven. Like, you're going to implement power O against BYU? Like, that's the one thing they do stop, Sean. And that was the point you were making at the beginning of the show. Like, running right at them has not really been something a lot of teams have had success with. Go look at the Oregon game. Yeah, they ran for over 200 yards. How many of those were just running it down their throat?
None of it.
Same with Utah State.
Yeah.
So it just didn't make a lot of sense. But there were adjustments. We can disagree with the game plan in certain areas, but there were clear adjustments in the second half. I mean, they ran a jet sweep. They did things to get to the perimeter. They ran stretch. They ran different. There was adjustments made, no doubt. Casa Hodge with a super chat. Appreciate that. We got Jaden Thomas involved in the wide receiver group, but for the other receivers not too involved, is that a Pine not looking his way issue or a Rees play calling issue? Guys, I thought it was a quarterback issue. I do. I thought there was opportunities to go to other guys that he just didn't go there. And I say that only because I'm not going to crush Drew Pine. He went 22 for 28 and over 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. It just there were things there for receivers to make plays. He just didn't go there. I do think that the game plan also was too much of an issue. The one adjustment they didn't make in the second half is what we talked about earlier, guys, is they did not take advantage of knowing BYU was adjusting to Michael Mayer. That was the one adjustment we didn't see. And Agreed. I thought you could have used the other receivers in that instance.
Agreed.
But this is the second straight week that the flats have been wide open.
Oh, yeah.
In the passing game. And on the interception, I think it was Lorenzo Styles. I mean, he's just in the flat for like a first down. It's like the easiest throw. Soon as you get the ball, hit your back foot, just let it go. Mm-hmm. Right to the outside, first down, continue to drive. No. You want to eyeball 87. And like you said, even if they didn't tip it, it's a good chance that it was going to be incomplete or picked off anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just it's frustrating.
Right.
I'm sitting here and I'm watching wide receivers. They're 7 to 8 yards off. One time they threw the hitch to Lindsey. They can do that all. They could have done that all game.
All day. They could bang RP. Like, remember the inside zone play where the guy came screaming off the edge and just blew up the run for a short gain?
Yeah.
Every other good offense in the country pulls that ball and throws it out to a wide open receiver.
Yes.
But BYU knows Notre Dame's not running an RPO in that instance, and they just crashed it. And, To your point, Sean, they could that could be stealing all game long.
And that might not be super creative, but it adds a whole nother dimension to your offense.
That's it.
Doesn't have to be super creative.
Speak to it, Sean, because why is the creative part important? You got to show everybody how smart you are.
Yep.
Man, just show teams, you know what? From this, we'll pop it out to our receivers. We'll throw a quick screen to our slot guy. If you're going to play 7 to 8 yards off, yeah, you're going to have to worry about this. Your linebackers are going to have to worry about this. Now that they have to worry about this helps the run game. Like, it all goes together.
Mm-hmm.
And when you just refuse to use any of that.
Yep. Next super chat, fellas, from Tyler Evans. I'm going to need somebody to explain to me what happened on display. Other than Jaden Mickey just running at a blocker as a running back ran by him. I'm not picking on Jaden. He had a bad game. He's a young kid. He had a bad game. He'll be fine. But Tyler Evans with a super chat says, how did BYU get the first down on a run that was 3rd and 17?
Notre Dame thought it was flag football and
Bad tackling.
Yeah.
And it was weird. They also lined up with their linebackers like 15 yards off the ball.
They did.
Which I thought was weird. Like,
that makes no sense.
Yeah. And I get that you're daring BYU to run, but once they show run, you need to fly to the ball.
Oh,
They did. They just they kept sitting back. So weird.
Mm-hmm.
So weird. It was such a bad play. Because again, guys, that didn't cost you against BYU. It made what should have been a 42-17 game, a 28-20 game. But that's the kind of thing to get you beat against Clemson and USC. And that's the stuff that's just got to stop.
And just keep running your defense, man.
Yeah.
Just keep
That's
running
it.
it.
Yeah.
It's the prevent stuff, man.
Now,
Like,
maybe you don't go cover one in that
Sure.
instance. Sure. Maybe you run quarters. Don't give up the one-on-one deep. Okay, fine. But to your point, Ryan, you don't run a prevent defense. I mean, they did that stuff against Cal, and that's the one thing that, you know what I mean? Like,
so many teams just run like that picket fence thing, right? Where they just sit everybody at the marker, and like, I get it, but like, it just never works. If we're being honest, like, it never works. It just doesn't.
Well, context, Ryan. They're down, but they're backed up.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At the end up being the game pretty much over.
Yeah.
They conceded. They conceded. The offensive coordinator conceded. You know what? We're just trying to run the ball.
Yes, exactly.
Some
They weren't thinking, hey, I think we can pop a draw here for 20 yards. Exactly. They were trying to get positioned to get a punt off. That's what they're trying. Sean, you're absolutely right. They were trying to get positioned to get a punt off. I mean, that was it. It's 3rd and 17. And their quarterback you got to remember what his numbers were at that time. I mean, that was coming out of – I'm going to pull these – that was coming – wasn't that their first drive of the second half? Wasn't that the defense's first drive of the second half? Yes, it was. At that time, Jaron Hall was 3 of 8 for 11 yards at that time. They had nothing going in the pass game. The only success they had up to that point in time was running the ball. And, it made no sense. It made no sense. Just do what you do. I'll say it again. You remember the NFL films on the Super Bowl, the Broncos-Packers Super Bowl 32?
Yeah.
And they're getting to that last drive and the last couple of plays. And Greg Robinson, the late Greg Robinson, goes with Mike Shannon. He goes, what do you want me to do? And he goes, just do what you would normally do. He goes, so you want me to blitz? He goes, just do what you would normally do in this situation. And guess what? They blitzed. They had been blitzing Brett Favre all game. They blitzed. He throws off his back foot, incomplete. Broncos win the Super Bowl. They didn't go away from what got him there. And, Ryan, I think you nailed that part of it. It just drives me nuts.
Yes.
Super chat from 808 Eds. Thank you for the super chat very, very much. Tom Rees is driving me nuts. I continue to wonder if Notre Dame will ever develop the killer instinct to put teams away and keep them there.
Yeah.
I don't disagree.
Anybody want to –
I mean, we talked about it already. We didn't want to see them go conservative into that 4-minute offense. Your 4-minute offense should be go down and score and put this darn thing away. Like that.
Right.
That should be your 4-minute offense, right?
Right.
And it's not that. And so I have to say I agree. I mean, they need to develop that. They don't have it yet. They do not, and they haven't had that for a long time because of the way that they are coached. So, and it's nothing against any individual kid. It's the way that they're coached. they can't have a killer instinct if they're told to run between the tackles for the last 10 minutes of every game, So that needs to be the coaches need to develop that. And I agree with this statement.
I think that there's a difference between putting the game on on the shoulders of your offensive line and backs and not. I think you can still have a killer instinct and do that. And that's my frustration. Go 13 personnel and on 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2 and run a play action, throw a shot or something. You know what I mean? Like you can be aggressive and still be, we're going to ride our line and our backs. And that was the thing. Like we didn't see the backs almost at all in the pass game other than screens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. After what they've done the last 2 games, like they just went away from that completely in this game.
Yeah.
That's good. I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. Like no wheels, no angle routes, nothing all day.
Nothing.
It was weird.
And you should have used that to then set up opportunities for other. And this is the thing we talked about during the show, Ryan, is use the stuff they know you're going to do to set up opportunities for a play action down the field to an Eli Raridan or a Holden Stace or a Tobias or a Lindsey or something else. And they didn't do any of that stuff. Like, I mean, the success you had with Mayer is like, if I'm sitting in the locker room at halftime, fellas, Vince and Sean, you guys are my offensive staff. I'm like, look, Mayer's killing them. I know it. You know it. Right. So what can we do? How do we think based off what we've seen from them in the previous 5 games? How do we think they're going to adjust to trying to stop Mayer? And then what are we going to do to counter it?
And that's the thing. What are we going to do to counter it?
Right.
How do we use Mayer as bait?
Right.
That's what they needed to do.
To your point, Vince, after BYU went up 25-13, I'd have had something right away where I would have done something with my backs or Mayer to try to get them to bite up and take a shot, take all the wind out of their sails.
Yep.
And they just went 3 and out.
Yep.
Super chat from Christopher Morgan. How about 87-7? Great player management. And I have to say, I was not a Drew Pine fan, but I'm getting there along with the O-line. Overall, needed this win, and I'm happy tonight. Getting better with week by week. At the end of the day, if you're not happy about this win, I think you need to just kind of take a deep breath and say, I'm not looking at this right. We're able to look at a game and say, there's stuff that's got to get better. There's stuff that I didn't like. But Sean, like you said at the very beginning, fellas, they went away from home and beat the number 16 team in the country.
We have to keep, like I said, and I said that was my first little soliloquy at the beginning of the show. Was like, I need to remind myself that Notre Dame just beat the number 16 team in the country,
right? And
they beat them from start to finish,
right? Because that's how coaches are, Vince. Like that's how we are as coaches. Like you're thinking about and what we could have, would have, could have, should have,
right?
But at the end of the day, it's a good win,
right? Now, I was sweating a little bit towards the end, but like the whole time I was watching the game, though, I felt really good about where Notre Dame was and how they were executing and all of that. I felt good about it. It didn't feel like it was a game that was in flux.
Sean, we can be frustrated by not putting a team away and looking how the team can and should be better and still say, it's a really good win and I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
I always say this all the time. We got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. End of the day, be happy with the win.
Yep,
got some stuff to clean up, but
I'm gonna sleep real well tonight.
Got a good win, fellas.
Yeah,
got a good win.
Yep.
You know what though? They're getting better.
Yes,
absolutely.
What was the comment you made at the beginning, Sean? If you play like this against Marshall, you're 4-1 right now.
Yep.
Yes.
And you beat Marshall by 20,
and you're still a top 10 team.
20.
Yeah, and you'd have beat Cal by a couple touchdowns too if you'd have played like this against Cal.
Yeah,
I mean, if you'd have played all year like the way you have the last 2 weeks, you're probably 4-1, maybe an outside chance that you're 5-0. But let's go 4-1. But you didn't play that way, and so yes, they're getting better, Sean. I mean, there's a lot of teams in the country that would like to play sloppy football and not be able to put the number 16 team away the way you'd like and walk away with a victory.
Yep.
With Stanford and UNLV coming up the next 2 weeks. Although Stanford's up 17-0 right now in Oregon State. Oregon State is falling flat on their face.
And Stanford has looked like garbage the entire game. I've been watching this game, and
Tanner McKee is a good quarterback. He just has
dude,
not a lot.
He is missing wide open
He's
receivers.
14 of 19 for 171 yards. So I mean, I haven't watched it. So imagine what his numbers would be if he did.
Get him, Vince. Get him, Vince.
Man, I think I'm just mad because we got to watch that game in prime time next week. Like, why is that game in prime time?
Well, it's because it's always a recruiting weekend.
Oh, yes.
They always have the California game as a recruiting weekend, and they like the recruiting weekends to be night games. So that's why. And it's going to be a big weekend for us too, Vince. Wink.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, I'll say something real quick. I do think it's sad that that series went from one dominance to the other dominance, and there was never like a period of time where than there was one really good game between the two and 15, and that was like it. It's like Stanford dominated, and then now Notre Dame dominates because Stanford stinks. It's just
they're not good.
No, they're not.
They're not coming back anytime soon either.
Oregon State has not responded well to that USC loss at all.
No.
Wicked Bronco Productions with a super chat. Thank you. Glad we got the W. However, that game had no business being that close. Agree. Second week in a row where the defense gave up big play TDs. Got to finish. We should have won by 19, but offense carried. To a degree, they did. Yeah, yes, but like you said, glad we got the W.
The defense was dominant for 3 quarters of that game, and two quarters of that game.
2.
Yeah.
2 1/8. What was it? Well, how many steers they have? Because they made. But here's the thing: they made the plays they needed to make in the second half, though, right? Like game on the line, 4th down, you stepped up and made the play.
Yeah.
Right. And lesser teams would not have done that. Lesser teams would have done 2 things differently. They wouldn't have responded with the field goal drive. Right? Yes, should have had a better play call to give yourself a chance for a better play, but they still made it a game where BYU couldn't beat them with the ensuing drive.
Right.
The best they could do was tie.
Yeah.
That matters. And then other good
does matter.
Teams, if you're not a good team, you don't make that 4th down stop either.
Right.
Right. So yes, there's things to clean up, but as he said, got it. Now, there needs to continue to be progress, and some of the stuff does need to get cleaned up, but you got the W. Randy Hernandez with a super chat. He goes, I know we can pick apart the negatives. I stayed away for a few weeks. I see a lot of positives that this team has grown. And,
Welcome
and Sean,
back,
that's what you were talking about earlier. Like, this team is clearly better now than it was a month ago.
So far away from, man.
Yep.
Hey, Ryan, what grade, how long before you stopped watching the Marshall game tape? Like 10 minutes in?
I burned that film like 3 weeks ago.
There's no way you watched that full.
What Marshall game?
Yeah, exactly. There's no way you watched that in its entirety. So, yes, we are light years away from where they were after that game.
Yeah. I guess here's another thing, and this is kind of spin, but it's also true. This team just beat the North Carolina game looks a whole lot better now than it did 2 weeks ago.
Because of what they've done the last 2 weeks,
Carolina blew out Virginia Tech and went on the road and beat Miami.
Yep.
Right? And outplayed Miami really the whole game. They let Miami back in with a couple bad picks in 3 plays, but they outplayed Miami. Yeah. They're 5-1 now. And you smashed them for 4 quarters, basically. You just played a 4-1 BYU team and really thoroughly outplayed them. You didn't put the game away. That means there are things that you definitely need to get better at, right? But the encouraging thing is if they can clean that stuff up, and it's all fixable, guys. That's the thing, is it's all fixable stuff.
Definitely.
This team has a chance to be really good if they can clean that stuff up.
Right.
Really good, because
it's not a lack of talent.
Yeah.
Right. It's not. We've had that argument in the past where it has been a lack of talent, right? That is not the case. Now, some of that talent needs to get on the field more often,
right? But
it is not a lack of talent.
Right. Let me give you guys some numbers, okay, just to kind of point some things out. Oregon beat BYU 41-20 on their home field in Eugene. They outgained BYU 439-366. 23 first downs for Oregon, 21 first downs for BYU. Notre Dame only beat BYU by 8. They outgained BYU 496-280. They had 24 first downs to 13 by BYU. It's the same story as last week. You clean up 3 plays. 2 of them came on the same drive. if you don't give up the third down and long, actually, really, if we're being honest, it's one play. You stop them on 3rd and 17, and we're having a completely different conversation. That's a whole different place to be than where they were a month ago when you could break down 60 minutes worth of Marshall and say, holy crap, what was that?
Yeah.
You're one stop, you're one dumb play on 3rd and 17 away from routing BYU. And that would have made the yardage split even greater.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is, context, there's a lot to clean up. But this team's come a long way, and there's a lot longer way to go. And I mean that, guys. That's meant to be an encouraging statement.
Mm-hmm.
This team is far from their peak, and that's
Agreed.
a good place to be. I'd rather have a win over Marshall, but based with that happening, that's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Timothy Sweeney with a super chat. Thank you, Timothy. Why did Freeman go for 2 and chase points in the first half? Would have been nice to be up 9 at the end. Yeah. And Timothy, I know you put this chat in before we talked about it, but yeah, guys, I know the analytics and all that kind of crap, but I think analytics are stupid in this instance.
You hear that, Ryan? Brian just called you stupid.
Vince.
I'm not a supporter of analytics, Vince. Don't do this.
I'm feeling frisky. It's 1 a.m.
Don't. But yeah, it's just bad. It's bad football, man. It's bad football.
Yeah,
bad decision.
Usually I get yelled at on this show. I'm glad Vince is getting yelled at.
Yeah, seriously. ND Nation with a super chat. Dear boy genius, a.k.a. Tommy Rees, Pine can pass. Let him play. I mean, he did. He went 22 of 28.
Yeah, I was going to say, he did fine.
yards and 3 touchdowns.
And they are slowly giving him more responsibility every game.
Right.
If you go back and you
better
look,
defense than the one they played the last game.
Absolutely. If you go back and you watch the 3 games that he has played, they are slowly giving him more responsibility as the quarterback. Give him some time.
Yep.
He'll be fine.
Yep, agree. Yeah, look, I did not love Tommy Rees's game plan today. This was nothing like the game plan for Marshall and Ohio State. Nothing like that.
Agreed.
Nothing like that. This was a guy who didn't want to put his young quarterback in position to lose the game, but still gave him enough opportunities to go make plays.
Right.
To put up some numbers and make – I mean, he made some big throws.
He did.
Some big throws.
He was clutch on 3rd down tonight. I mean, he just was.
Yep.
And if you give me a quarterback that's clutch on 3rd down, we can make things happen.
Yes, because the other stuff will get cleaned up with more experience. Michael Burke with a super chat for I'm trying to think of what that one is for, guys. He always has some kind of –
It was the Twins.
Oh, gotcha. 9 and
57.
57.
Nice.
Their numbers.
Got it.
Yeah.
I wish their numbers were like 99 and 95. That would be so much better.
Hey, at least it's not 0 and 1. Okay,
that's true.
So give one a triple digit number.
That's true. The Twins made some big plays, some misses too, but let's be positive. Yeah, it's what we talked about earlier, Michael. Like when the game was on the line, Jason did what he needed to do. I thought Justin was solid today. I thought Justin was really solid today. Xavier Curry with a super chat. Proud of the win, but we have to do a better job of finishing teams once we're up with a big lead. Absolutely, 100%. Xavier. We've talked a lot about that, but you're absolutely right. But I think, guys, this is the proper response, though, right? Like, not just I'm glad we win, but like proud of this win. But I think I
should be proud of this win.
That's where I think people should be. I'm proud of the way this team fought because of all the sloppiness, did you ever feel like it was a lack of effort or a lack of passion or fire? No, it was
never.
Lack of execution. Sometimes thinking too much, but just lack of executions. I like the way you said that, Xavier. Patty with a super chat had a few too many Powers Irish whiskeys. Loved Coach Freeman's defensive timeout to help them regroup at the end. Coach Golden out of a mulligan got a mulligan on the safety blitz, but that's a second safety blitz mulligan.
Yeah, it needs to be stricken from the record. Get it out of there.
Yes, if you're not blitzing number 11, and I didn't see him play today. Did anybody else see him play?
I did not.
Wonder if he's still injured.
Did Xavier Watts play? I didn't
see him either.
I didn't notice him either. I didn't notice him either. Robert Rhodes with the super chat. Seems like Tyree's idea of faking out defenders is to do the samba. It's like he marks an X on the field and stands there dancing. What's your take on Tyree? Is he better off as a slot receiver? Maybe. I don't really agree with really any of that, to be honest with you guys. Like, he had a bad game. And it wasn't even a bad game. He didn't have – up until the long runs at the end, he was leading the team in yards per carry until those last 2 runs.
Yep.
And so he didn't have a good game. It's as simple as that, right?
His footing was off today for whatever reason.
Yeah, he just was a little out of control. I thought, he was so patient in the last 2 games. I thought he rushed a lot today.
Yeah.
And I think part of it, though, guys, is they were running duo and power. He doesn't run that well. He does not run duo well.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He runs zone well and counter well.
One
That's
step
what he
and
runs
go.
well. Yes. Or he likes to be patient on the stuff that's designed to be patient. Power row is not a patient run. It is a downhill run.
Yep.
That's Audric Estime stuff. That's another thing that didn't make a lot of sense is you're running power O and stuff like ISO type stuff with Chris Tyree. That's not his game. So, you guys know this from the NFL. Like Barry Sanders, hardly ever had a fullback because his style was not conducive to that. Emmett Smith,
he was not a power runner.
Right. Emmett Smith, Terrell Davis thrived on having a fullback. Right. You got to know your backs.
Yeah.
And I don't think they did that today. B Straw with Super Chat. Thank you, my friend, very much. Just got back from the game. Great stadium atmosphere for both teams. Second half was stressful. The team brings home the win. Now I can enjoy the rest of the vacation. Go Irish. That's a great way of looking at it. So if you're in Vegas, you're hanging out in Vegas and you're not grumpy, got the W.
Seriously, enjoy. It's. I mean, shoot, it's only 10 o'clock in Vegas. Party on, Wayne.
Right.
Let's go.
That's right. Tommy Guns with Super Chat. Ryan, what's Foskey's draft stock doing so far?
Tommy, you're on the message board, sir. I just put an intel piece on his draft stock right now. Come on, man. No, but
thanks for the super chat.
He has several first round grades still around the league as of right now. It's kind of viewed more as a late round one type of player than an early round one player as it currently stands. They like his physicality and power this year so far with his length in the run game, and he's got incredible tools, needs to improve the finer details of playing the position, namely pass rush repertoire and secondary moves.
Yeah. He tried that early and wasn't effective. And as he's kind of gone back to just his kind of one trick, he's been a better player, which is kind of strange.
Tommy, read the message board, man.
Yeah. Hey, he's busy, man. He's been on some long trips lately. But
he's got downtime. He's got downtime.
On the board, yes. Artie Gwynn with a super chat. Thank you, Artie. Thanks for another great show. Appreciate very much the additional post-game conversation. Artie, you are welcome. We certainly enjoy it. Truman Theodore Dumel. With a super chat, Sean, and I think he directs this towards you. Hey, Sean, did Tobias play, and how did Audric look? Also, did Rubio play well? Do you want to take that one there, Mr. Davis?
Tobias got a few plays. Audric looked really darn good
on passes. Tobias got in the game on pass plays.
Yes, he did. So that's
step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Next game, he'll get one in his direction.
Those are bigger baby steps than before.
And then Rubio, mixed bag, right? Did some good things, not so good on other plays. So, Yep.
Yeah, this was a good. Sean. I think this was a good day and Truman really appreciate the super chat, man. That's a big one. We appreciate that, Sean. I think a game like this is great for a kid like Rubio because in the past 2 games, they've given him very specific job.
Yeah. Because
you didn't have Lacey and Howard Cross, he had to have an expanded role today, and at times, as you said, he looked good, and at times he got knocked around a little bit.
Yeah.
For a young kid that's really getting his first taste the last 3 games. Sometimes it's good to get smacked in the mouth a little bit because this is a kid who never had to deal with that growing up. I mean, he was always by far the biggest kid on the field.
Yeah,
it's good for him to have some of the dude. I got driven 5 yards off the ball. That's never happened to me before. Why?
This is
fix it,
right?
Yes.
And this is different because in talking to like Malik and other guys that have played in the game against BYU, like these are grown men. Like this isn't like another 18, 19-year-old. These dudes have families, like 25, 26. Yes. And when they hit you,
Sean, there was a player on BYU's team that was a part of the 2014 high school recruiting class.
Are you serious? Did he play?
I don't know. But 2014, man. 2014.
2014. Good Lord. I was still missing a kid at that point.
Let's clear this up. What Vince means is one of his kids hadn't been born yet.
That's what I'm saying. My second grader was not alive at that point. That's the point I was making. Sorry.
I was still missing a kid. Wait, what? Yeah, we lost L for like about
whatever.
And a half.
Yeah.
We lost Dylan for like a year and a half. We couldn't find
I
him.
mean, shoot. He'd probably find his way back home, unfortunately.
Oh, 2000. That is the Niles Morgan class, fellas.
Yeah. Speaking of Dylan, I'm going to throw this out there.
Yeah.
I was watching the game on an iPad at a soccer game because his team won the sectional championship tonight.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
Very
so it's
nice.
exciting.
Very
First
nice.
one in like 5 years, so
Very nice.
that was cool.
Congrats to Dylan. Tell him I said so.
I will do that.
Ghostly Barbecue with a super chat. That's a great name, by the way. Do you guys believe Notre Dame will be in the standings since LSU lost to Tennessee, or do we need one more game to win? I'd have to look at the rest of the rankings. There was a couple other teams that were ranked that got knocked out today.
Yeah,
I'd have to look at the standings, but here. I think Notre Dame's probably a week away, and a little bit more, because I don't think they go from like no votes to top 25 by beating BYU by 8. I will say this: if they would have stopped up 3rd and 17, forced BYU to punt from their own end zone, and then did what we think they would have done, that might have got them in.
Yeah,
because you blew out Carolina, then you blow out BYU.
Because Utah lost, but they're not going to be unranked.
No, but like you could make a case that 3-2 Notre Dame with a win over 5-1 BYU or North Carolina, and then beating BYU, they should be ranked higher than BYU.
Sure,
but not with an 8-point win where you kind of had to hold on in the end. No,
Kentucky lost.
So. Yeah.
So the number 11 team,
did Kentucky end up losing to South Carolina?
They did by 10.
Wow,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's 2 in a row for them.
Yeah, and Kansas obviously lost.
But they shouldn't drop out.
And what about Washington? They lost to an unranked
they end up
Arizona State.
Yeah, they should drop out. That's 2 in a row. And Arizona State sucks.
So that's two. That's two that could drop out. So,
but Notre Dame got 0 votes in the AP last week.
No, you're right.
Like honestly, right now, if we're looking at the whole season, North Carolina should be ranked ahead of Notre Dame.
Agreed.
Right, because the ranking should not just be about the head-to-head. It's your entire resume.
Right.
Yeah.
And right now, Carolina's 5-1. They lost to a good Notre Dame team, but they beat Miami. They handled their business. They don't have a loss to Marshall on their docket.
Yeah.
Right. So no, to me, if they go and handle business against Stanford next week and do to Stanford what we think they should, then sure, then we can talk. Get
LSU out of there, though.
I do love the fact that LSU got in for like 5 minutes and then just got curb stomped.
Take those stupid purple headphones with them.
And Tennessee didn't even execute that well. They should have scored over 50 in that game. I mean, it could have been worse. What the heck was he thinking? Going for it on 4th down at the end of the second quarter. What the heck was that?
Gifted him 3 points, man. Gifted him 3 points.
I literally just sat back
and then he started
smiled.
Brian, and then Kelly started yelling at the sideline after he made the decision. It was
to go
like
forward.
You were down 20. It was a gift that you were only down 20-7 at that point in time.
Absolutely.
You had gotten so thoroughly outplayed that like 20-7 was like a gift. You should have gone into that like, oh, we are so lucky to only be down 13. Kind of like BYU. I mean, it's a very similar situation. BYU was lucky to only be down 18-6 at halftime. And they just kind of, hey, let's just get in, let's regroup and go. That was such a dumb call.
You know what was crazy about that game too was that Hendon Hooker didn't even have his best game.
No,
they could have killed him.
When he got drilled in the ribs on that one play, he was not the same after that. Like he just, you could tell he just couldn't get into throws. He couldn't get the full torque into the throws, and he was off target. Like those 2 throws he missed at the end of the first half, it should have been 27-7.
Yep.
He doesn't miss those throws. Which tells me, and that was like what, 2 series after he got drilled? A series after he got drilled?
Over the middle.
Yeah, he was off. And you still got destroyed. And I love that they were trying to get that garbage touchdown at the end and threw a pick. That was so great. It was so great. Irish for Life, just so I don't miss this miss getting this in, thanks for having these awesome shows. You're welcome. It means so much to be able to see everyone and have the fellowship with IB Nation and our welcome guests. God bless. You're welcome, buddy. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, we love doing this. We love being with our IB family when we do these shows, even at 1:17 in the morning. Nick Gonzalez with a super sticker. Thank you very much, Nick, for that. Sean Hartman with a super chat. Thank you, Sean. Am I the only one thinking the officiating was terrible today? I don't think so. Do you got thoughts on that, guys?
Officiating is always terrible.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But it was not good.
It didn't stand out more than normal though. So I guess I agree with Ryan on this one. It's like, whatever.
Yeah, like did you guys see the last play of the TCU Kansas game? The 4th down? Like 2 different receivers got held by TCU.
Oh, I did see that actually.
It's like I mean blatant holds, like guy getting ripped back and no call. I'm like, oh God, so terrible. Relly Q, after the catastrophic Marshall game, I'm sitting comfortably watching folks critique a convincing win over number 16. Big win, keep building and go Irish. That's a great chat, guys. Great comment.
Absolutely.
And it speaks to Sean what you were saying earlier of where this team was less than a month ago against Marshall. And now a month later, and we're not happy that they only beat number 16 BYU by 8 points. And the game they outgained it by over 200
Early
yards.
outplayed them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they outgained it by 216 yards. Notre Dame only had 297 yards of total offense against Cal. And they outgained BYU by 216 yards. So, yeah, they've come a long way. There's no doubt. And a big part, look, when your quarterback plays well, you're going to win games. And Drew has played good. Did he play great football today? No. Did he play good football today?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes, and in big moments, he got the ball to his best guy, and the team with the better players won. And when your quarterback can avoid the mistakes for the most part, but even the pick, it prevented you from getting points, but it's not like you threw it at your own 15 where you set up them for points. So, yeah. Craig Sebring with a super chat. Happy we won, but too many field goals inside the 10 and that 4th and 1 combination of bad play calling and execution. I don't think it was really an execution problem, guys. I don't. I think they had 8 guys in the box and you had 6.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think it was that. I mean,
it's a numbers
issue. That was it for me. You know, I don't care how good your offensive line is. You're not blocking 8 dudes with 6. Thomas L with a super chat. Thank you, Thomas. Thanks for doing these shows. Sean looking like he's studying his Madden playbook. Okay.
Not even sure what that means, but it's funny.
No.
Maybe they're catching me looking. They're catching me mid conversation with recruits out in Vegas.
Gotcha. There you go.
Maybe.
Sean doing his job.
Oh,
what does
that.
It say down there? What does it say down there under his name? Y'all see that right there?
Yeah.
Recruiting analyst.
I don't have a title. I'm just here. I'm here for the fun.
Yes, you do. You just don't put it into your chat. That's a choice that you make.
I'm joking.
Thomas, Zach Martin with super chat. This is a good question. Does Maris look a step slow after the injury?
No, he looks a step slow because he thinks too much.
Yeah,
I think his eyes are
a step slow.
I think it's a little bit of both. I'm not blaming his poor play on the injury. I think it's primarily on what you guys just said, but I have not seen like a burst from him. Like the range from him. You know, we really haven't seen that a whole lot, to be honest with you. I mean, he played better against North Carolina, but it wasn't that. It wasn't like the sideline to sideline guy that we thought he would be.
That's true.
Nick Gonzalez with another super sticker. Thank you, Nick, very much. Relly Q also with another super chat. Appreciate you. Game stats showed Notre Dame exceeded number 12 Oregon's performance against BYU in total yards, rush, pass, third down efficiency, total plays, time of possession, #perspective. Yeah, that's what we were saying a little bit ago.
Like it.
You know, when we brought those numbers up. But Oregon didn't have the missed opportunities, which is why they won 41-20.
That's right.
So the point is, this shows the potential this team has.
Yes.
But at some point, they've got to start cleaning that stuff up.
Right.
And that's going to be the key. And once they do, like there's going to be some team over the next 2 months that Notre Dame just puts that whole thing together. I just pray to God it's not against UNLV. Like, don't waste it on UNLV. You know what I mean? Like, have it be on Clemson or USC or something. Maybe even Syracuse. But this team's going to have a game at some point, fellas, where they just kind of put it all together, and it's going to be impressive. And then we have our last super chat of the night, fellas. Actually, we have 2 more. Excuse me. Somebody didn't start that last one. I apologize. Let's see here. All right. David Knight. David Knight with his super chat. It is discouraging to wide receivers or recruits. Is it discouraging to receivers and recruits to see Pine lock on Michael Mayer so much? I am very confident with Pine, and I think we all love Michael Mayer. Yes, JT got some nice plays, but it seems like he is throwing to Michael Mayer no matter what. Great W. Guys, I'll say this. I'll just briefly answer this because I know we want to get out of here. Most recruits have deeper thoughts on things than we do as fans because they don't react to things emotionally. And what they're going to think is, hey, if I'm the dude, then the quarterback's going to throw me the ball, and he's going to look for me to get the ball. The other thing is they're going to be smart enough to know, look, just like we said, these kids are sharp. That's what I've always said. I've said this a million times. Recruits don't react as emotionally to wins and losses as fans do because they're not fans. They didn't grow up, most of them, bleeding Notre Dame. They've grown to love Notre Dame, but they don't have the same emotional attachment that we all have. So they don't overreact to Marshall the way – like there were people in this chat that literally thought like half the class was going to leave after Marshall. One did, right? And so they usually have a deeper perspective, David. And I also don't think they react as much to things like that. I think they're going to say, hey, look, the quarterback went 22 of 28 for 262 passes. And if I'm the dude, they'll get me the ball. So I think we're more so, David, what it's going to be is, because I don't think he locked in on Mayer last week. I thought he spread the ball around really well last week. I thought Drew did a really nice job of spreading the ball around last week. I think this was if it becomes an issue, like he does the same thing against Stanford and does the same thing against so-and-so, maybe it becomes an issue. But the other thing that recruits know, Michael Mayer going to be here next year. So, ain't a problem. The
Why
kids
not?
in the 23 class will never – they may play with Michael Mayer, but it's going to be in the NFL. It ain't going to be in Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I'm telling you all that right now. Nick Gonzalez with a super chat. Thank you, Nick. Says, how important is the month of October as we go into November with USC Clemson in November? Also, do you think Tommy is holding on to the playbook so we don't show anything we're planning for USC Clemson? If he is, that's stupid.
Yep. Super stupid. You don't save plays for November.
No. Not when you're on October 8th.
Right.
Like
if you want to have a trick play in your back pocket or something, fine. But not something that's actually part of your offense. You don't hold on to that. That's and no offense, Nick. I'm not saying, but yeah.
I think he's just looking for a reason to explain why the offense just looked kind of dull today.
Hey, we're all looking for those reasons at times, believe me.
Yeah. So for me, guys, we have talked about this all. Nick, we talked about this all week, and I think that this is why this game was so big. Because the month of November is the month that's going to prepare them for. I mean, the month of October is the month that's going to prepare them for the big games in November.
Absolutely.
And when you look at the way the schedule sets up, you had North Carolina, which was a tough game. We thought would be a tough game. Then the bye, then BYU. BYU was the best team on your schedule between the bye week and Clemson. And so the reason this game was so big, because if you win this game and you keep getting better, even if it's just incrementally better, your next three opponents are much more manageable than your last two. Does that mean that they're going to guarantee 3 wins the next 3? No, if Syracuse can beat them if they play like they did against Marshall, Stanford could beat them if they play like they did against Marshall, UNLV can't. But the point is, you get this W, it sets up a really good month of October. And then now all of a sudden you're 6-2, you're back in the top 20, and then you've got some momentum. You've grown. You've had the bumps in the road. You can work some things out against teams that maybe doesn't hurt you as much. And during that stretch, you're growing as a team. But then also, if you look at Clemson's schedule, I think Clemson's going to get tested pretty decently between now and then. Clemson played BC today. That was a tough game. They got to go to Florida State next week. Then they got to play Syracuse the week before they play Notre Dame. They're also coming off of games against NC State and Wake Forest. Like they're going to be tested, over the next month. And Notre Dame will not be quite as tested, I don't think. So that's why this game was so important, because October success should lead to a really good November. But you had to get this game. We said this yesterday, Ryan. And I don't know if you guys listened to the show Ryan and I did yesterday. Said this game is going to shoot Notre Dame off in one of two directions. Very clearly. You win this game, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's time to roll. You lose this game, and there's major question marks, because now you're in the middle of October and you have a losing record. It would have been bad. So anyway, guys, that is going to do it for today's show. I really appreciate everybody that was a part of it. Nick, we're sorry that you couldn't figure out the super chat. We appreciate all of it, though. We do. We really do appreciate the super stickers as well.
No doubt.
End of the day, fellas, Notre Dame is now 3-2. They just beat number 16 BYU 28-20. Lots to clean up. We'll have upon further review tomorrow with me and Ryan. And we'll obviously dive into the film. We'll break it all down. We'll show some of the things that went well, show some of the things that maybe they need to improve upon, dive more into a little bit more into the weeds, and have some fun with that. But make sure that you hit that, check out the message board and all the stuff we've got going on. But may say, Kay, we're glad to have this back. Join the message board, everybody. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, leave a 5-star review, visit the IB store for the best merch. And as always, and by the way, there now is a tracksuit in has added tracksuits to the Printful. I'm not going to put it in the store, but I know there's some people that are talking about the IB Mafia. So there's
4 of them on order right now.
I'm I'm not rocking a tracksuit. I can't do it.
Come on, you and I walking into the stadium for the Stanford game at night in the tracksuits.
We're an IB tracksuit.
Let's go.
It's not happening. Anyway, everybody have a great rest of your night. We will see you all tomorrow. Make sure you stay locked into irishbreakdown.com. Of course, sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Have a wonderful night. Notre Dame is 3-2, everybody. Big win for the Irish. They're going to keep getting better. Stanford's next week, so a lot to discuss. And when we get to Tuesday, we will then dive into our Stanford analysis. Monday, those two guys will be together talking about what has been yet another crazy weekend of college football. So thanks for being with us, everybody. Appreciate y'all very, very much. Go Irish. Thank you for joining us on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.